Everybody, wait a minute.
Welcome back to VladTv. We got you in here because you are allegedly a former bodyguard with B.E.D.S.
I am.
The Black Excellence Deep State.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're used to having gang members and rappers and other folks come in here and snitch on, talk about one another. Tell us a little bit about what B.E.D.S is and what your role is.
Well, I used to be a bodyguard for both Roland Martin and Spike Lee. And now that I saw everybody coming out here and getting paid, telling their stories and their truths, and especially now that B.E.D.S has been exposed, I thought, time for me to get my bag too and tell some truths.
So then why are you here? Why are you doing this interview?
Like I said, to tell some truths, and everybody's out here getting paid. So given my experience, why not?
Well, we didn't say anything about money, but definitely tell it all.
Yeah, well, okay. Whatever. I said I was going to do, go on shows like yours and Adam 22 and Math Hoffa, but they're out here claiming broke.
Well, I'm not broke, but let's not worry about that or accuracy. Let's just tell some good stories. Like, why is your hand wrapped?
Oh, you talking about this? I used to work security for these key members of B.E.D.S, and sometimes things, got a little wild. So you saw what happened last week on I Mix What I Like when Kanye was talking reckless about Spike.
I don't watch the channel. What happened?
Well, Kanye was out here talking recklessly and said last week that his interview with DJ Academics was actually a setup by B.E.D.S and Spike Lee in particular. And Kanye said he thought he was on set to rehearse, do a screen test for Black Klansmen too. So, he was talking crazy. So, we had to handle that.
Wait, are you acknowledging criminal activity? And if so, definitely keep going.
I mean, of course. Isn't that what you do here? I've seen it all. B.E.D.S is COINTELPRO. Ruined careers, sex parties, and all kinds of stuff. But the real mission is to spread false hopes and scattered successes. You know, the B.E.D.S motto, scattered success breeds universal hope.
So say more about B.E.D.S. What is this entity, this organization? What is it meant to do? Snitch. I mean, say a little bit more about that.
Man, B.E.D.S is into everything. You were part of it too. See, they use you and Adam 22 and you know, that's how they get rid of the competition. Come on, man. You interview people, they incriminate themselves, and then B.E.D.S can look even more clean. So when they go out and live, you know, and live off the fake promises, no one questions them. How do you think they get so many black people on here?
Well, I mean, because I built up a strong platform. Give people a voice, you know, for the culture.
Yeah, okay. Maybe you will catch up to that one day. People don't even know how they play to people's faces. Like, for instance, you know, I work for both Roland Martin and Spike Lee. Like I said, I used to work for both Roland Martin and Spike Lee. So you see one of their most recent interviews? Roland is outside somewhere and Spike is in the back of his car doing the interview.
Okay.
Well, I'm the one driving the car. And we are making loops around Roland Martin to make it look like Spike is being driven somewhere important.
Okay, play the clip.
Well, this morning, folks, when I was coming to flying to Austin, I got an email from my homeboy Spike Lee asking what was I aware of, and I told Spike we've been covering this stuff, this erasure of African Americans. He said, "Man, I got to come on." And so joining us right now, Roland Martin Unfiltered, is Spike Lee. What's up, Spike?
See, and that's me driving.
What's up? Spike, the reason I wanted to start this way again, I'm standing at, this is a Confederate monument on the Texas state grounds. When our kids come to Texas Capitol, they got to walk past this crap. And that's what they want. They want us to celebrate this stuff, but they don't want us to celebrate and remember Jackie Robinson. And now they're trying to say, oh, it was a mistake. No, what they did was they typed in.
It's been more, Jackie's not the only one. That's not a mistake.
That's right.
They've done it to African Americans. Come on, Japanese Americans. It's some you know what, but I don't want to curse. I'm glad there's been an uproar about this, and I was just waiting for them to erase Crispus Attucks, the first American to die for this country. People gotta read. People gotta read.
You just don't read, beloved.
We gotta read.
But here's the deal, though. That's why they want to get rid of the websites. They want to get rid of the web pages. They want to get rid of these things. People don't have access to the information. And you know how I feel. It's why we got to have black-owned media.
See? Spike and Roland talking tough about Trump. They're defending their own positions in all of this. Don't you see? It's B.E.D.S. It's a B.E.D.S setup. We built this country. Who gets the benefit? B.E.D.S.
So you're saying this interview was fake?
Yeah, man. But then I got fired right after because Spike caught me watching the Tyler Perry movie on lunch break. So now I'm here trying to get the bag and expose B.E.D.S.
So, but then again, if you say you understand and know what my platform is here to do and you want to expose B.E.D.S, why are you here? Why come to this platform?
Like I said, to get that bag and do what I can to expose B.E.D.S. And also because live from these tree-lined streets, it's Saturday night.
I mix what I like. Mix what I like is exactly where you want and need to be. I mix what I like, organic, vegan, soul food from your immediate diet. Get healthy. I mix what I like.
We're here on I Mix What I Like. You may check us out on imixwhatilike.org, where you can see all these other shows and what my daddy likes and other cool things.
All right. What's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like Live. Saturday Night Live. I'm Jared Ball. Happy to be your host. Welcome, 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 welcome. Peace. Come on in. Please do like, share, subscribe. Support the platform on your way in. Peace to the chat, the undefeated chat. I don't know if I would say I have extra time. I would say, but I appreciate it. I hope you have some fun with that. I do have a little bit of fun. So the method is just basically very clear. Find the easiest editing setup construct. Think about it throughout the course of the week. Write a little bit of a script, and then it's shot and edited very quickly. So, but it is fun. And James, I'm not. I hear you. It's not at all to give Vlad undue attention. It's in some ways I hope to point out some of the contradictions of his presence in these spaces. But welcome everybody. I thought so. I will say I'll start off a little bit, keeping things a little bit shorter, and then as promised, if folks want, I'll put the link in the chat again a little bit earlier. But a couple of things to get to we can start off with. And peace, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Please do, if you didn't already, check out Saturdays with Renee over on Black Liberation Media earlier today. Another great show digging in on the vagaries of Black capitalism and trying to unearth some realities and, had a good time. No, thank you, James. Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you. Appreciate you. Yeah. But yeah, right on. Okay. Let's see where. So actually, that interview, I know it's a couple of weeks old, but that interview was with Roland and Spike was wild. And some of you pointed it out. I think Chitty Macho, you pointed it out as well, that the praise, I mean, it really is this Black excellence praise song. And that while they're praising Jackie Robinson, they're ignoring of obviously Paul Robeson. And while they're and then this idea that we should praising Crispus Attucks for being the first to die for this country, and I mean, instead of pointing that out as a contradiction, and as I'm forgetting where I'm getting this, maybe Howard Zinn, but in leaving out the labor conflict that was at the heart of all of that Boston Tea Party and all of that stuff in the first place, that has obviously never been resolved. So. And then where it ended, where I cut it off, where Roland is after he plugged his book and after he's saying why we support Black-owned media, again, not raising the contradictions around that, and then not raising the contradictions around the idea that he wants to replicate the dominant national commercial media and news source that we see in the mainstream, which is itself a major problem. So, and hamstrung by the same commercial confines and conflicts and constrictions and all of that. So, yeah, so a little bit of fun with that there. So I did submit this book chapter I've been talking about, which has also been taking up a lot of my time in terms of thought. And I just don't know how to better try to make my point in 3,500 words relatively. So I'm looking forward to the feedback that they give me. I did restructure it. I included a lot of I put in a lot of the, addressed a lot of what the criticism was from both the editors of this volume and also those at that Johns Hopkins book, well, not book, but scholarly seminar, research seminar, graduate research seminar. So we'll see. I like what I'm trying to do. I like what I've tried, but I would, and it's basically, again, reviewing 150 years of the Black capitalist narrative, trying to explain why the criticism that those of us who are critical of Black capitalism is what it is. Where's the narrative? Where does it originate? And how did it, and I will say the one component I've told the editors I want to turn this into a book at some point. That I would like to expand to a book, because there's so much more I didn't say about Black media. I didn't work in the Erica Edwards piece that I would like to, and some other, and how I see her work in relationship to some other work. So there's a lot I would like to do, but so we'll see how that goes. What else? So then, well, I'll get to that in a second. Let me do this one first, because let's see if I do all of this. All right, I did that. And by the way, the link to that full Roland Martin Spike Lee interview is in the show description already. So the other day we went to, I took my daughter to one of her many events, and I went walking around and ran up on a Black-owned bookstore in Mahogany Books, specifically down at the National Harbor down there in, I guess they're saying it's officially in Oxon Hill, Maryland. So I guess just outside DC. And went in looking around, and went to the economics section. And admittedly, I don't know. I wonder if there needs to be more said about Black bookstores and some of what is said about economics. But I haven't been around enough to. But I found this book here, and I might do more with it at some point. The History of the Black Dollar by Angel Rich, forward by Dr. Maya Rockymore, who I've crossed paths with a couple of times over the years. And I haven't read much of it, admittedly. I just read the very brief forward from, is that what? Yeah, by Dr. Rockymore. And I just noted where I'm just sure where, it just looks like we're headed for disagreement. I sort of flipped through the book a little bit, and I think we're not on the same page. But long story short, the argument here is that there is a need to assess the history of the Black community's relationship to the economic system in this country, noting some of the still unequal relationships. This book was published in, 2017. And the end of the forward here says that the biggest task, quote, the biggest task ahead is launching and achieving a wealth equity policy and political agenda that pushes for systemic investments in K-12 financial literacy and capability, K-12 exposure to the principles and practice of entrepreneurship, post-secondary business accelerators targeting entrepreneurs of color and entrepreneurs of any race from low-income households, guaranteed access to business capital and supports, better opportunities for building matched savings over a lifetime, anti-wealth stripping laws that protect assets and other opportunities for economic inclusion. And I thought, because when I first, I was wondering where she was going, and when I first saw the sentence start with a political agenda, I thought, okay, but everything is about teaching Black people this idea that teaching Black people how, from an early age, how to engage business and economics will be the solution. Then she starts her concluding paragraph by saying, we also need to get our minds right. If used properly, the Black dollar can not only provide our families with generational wealth, it can also accelerate the liberation of our communities. Please see the many other episodes regarding discussions of the Black dollar, et cetera, and so forth, especially where we, wow, what was I even reading from? From the Ebony Reed and Louis storybook, 15 Cents on the Dollar, where again, they say emphatically, the Black dollar is a marketing myth. So just not sure that we're on the same page. If there's to be a political policy agenda, why not start and end with a redistribution of the wealth created through our already existing participation in this economy? 70% based on consumption, 27 trillion in GDP. It could be argued that we don't need any more just random businesses. We just need more redistribution of the wealth created from the businesses that already exist. In fact, do I agree with that more concretely? Is there anything that, I don't know, maybe there's something you all can think of, or we could all think of, that isn't properly produced that we could, but in other words, it feels like that we have the productive capability and certainly the products that we need. It's just a matter of not having access to them sufficiently, or the distribution of the wealth from the procurement of them distributed properly. So I don't even, I think we might be on the same page. Peace, Poncho. Am I supposed to have received a copy of that book, by the way? And I did ask if I could get my book put in there, and so I have to contact them. Yeah, we're not in the same bookstore or book, but we're not on the same. Yeah, correct. So, but I saw the title. I don't mind. Again, I don't mind supporting a Black-owned business, bookstores included. And there we have it. But the real thing that I thought we could check out is that, so I've been on and off. So years ago, so after I published I Mix What I Like, a mixtape manifesto, one of the things that I enjoyed that happened was that I came across a criticism of the work from Stephen Ferguson, who has gone on by now to become a brilliant and increasingly accomplished philosopher and Marxist philosopher, and I think that's very important here. And years ago, he presented on this and then invited me to talk with his class at the time, which I appreciated. And oversimplifying, essentially his argument was that I Mix What I Like was part of this larger problem with African-centered thought, cultural nationalism, and that the book wasn't sufficiently materialist and strayed too far from Marxism and was, losing its relevancy. He didn't like the internal colonialism approach that I use in the book, and thought that what I had done there was in some ways emblematic of many of the problems with an approach to not only the study of Black people, but the study of hip hop, because the book was in some ways, at least, ostensibly about hip hop. So, but again, I don't mind the disagreement. I don't mind the criticism. I didn't find anything that he said to be disrespectful, and he was willing to engage, which is, I think, exactly how this is supposed to work. So now I do, as I've talked about before, won't belabor it tonight, but come back to that point tonight. But there's many errors, or flaws, I would say, in with my book. I Mix What I Like. It was, again, I love the argument, love what I was trying to do. It was seminal. The approach of the mixtapes, starting with the mixtape, exposing a colonial relationship. I really liked what I was at least trying to do. Was based on a project I had actually been doing. So there was, had the practical element to it, had the theoretical element to it. It's still like, it's my favorite. I love what I was trying to do, but it again it was not without some flaws, including, I was unfair to Marx and wrong about Marx at one point. In as I think a couple others that I was referencing were too. But okay, so as things go, we lost touch. No beef or anything, just lost touch. And then more recently, I started to want to re-engage, and I was revisiting his book that came out 10 years ago on the shortcomings of Black studies, as I've been trying to rework my intro to Black studies class, and went and revisited the work that he published, and had reached out before about looking to revisit his criticism elsewhere of African-centered thought, Marimba Ani in particular, which I would still like to see a principled and vigorous discussion in the Black community around these disagreements. I don't, but my fantasy of playing once upon a time of playing a role in collapsing this divide, of demonstrating how the internal colonialism approach for me does collapse the divide between the cultural and the material. And which is a point that will come. It comes up here in a moment. And but I admittedly don't have that particular illusion anymore, at least about my role in that. But in that reconnection, uh, uh, Professor Ferguson sent me a copy of his 2023 book, which I had not read, and specifically sent me in isolation a chapter or chapters that he thought I would be interested in discussing, including one where he talks about me or mentions me. So admittedly, this is the only chapter that I've read. So I didn't even read both of so more on this to come. And I've already invited him to join me at some point for a friendly discussion. Because as I said to him in the email, well, literally quoting myself, I said, my man, you did me dirty. I don't think he was fair to my argument. I don't think he got it right, but I said, I'm happy to, and I did say he did me dirty. I think he did, but I'm happy to always happy to get my name mentioned and to be acknowledged. But I'm also happy to have a conversation about where we disagree about that. So I will show you here. Because by the way, like if you saw yeah, let's just. So the book is Paralysis of Analysis, Stephen Ferguson. I'll get you the full title, and I put already the link in the show description already, if I'm not mistaken. And no, I did not. My apologies. I did not. Just double checking. I did not, but I will. And this is the chapter here, but and the only one I've read so far, admittedly. Chapter 4, The Political Economy of Hip Hop Music. He sent it to me, asking me to check it out. So I look forward to it. And like I said, having a discussion with him at his earliest convenience. Let's see here. Let me adjust this a little bit. Nope, not this. That's not the one I wanted to do. Let's do this one here. There we go. All right, The Political Economy of Hip Hop Music by Professor Stephen Ferguson. Chapter 4. As he starts off here, political economic issues are central to the music we listen to. Beneath the glimmering facade of wealth, power, and happiness, sung about in songs and displayed in music videos and award shows, there's a long, twisted tale of the exploitation of artistic labor. In this chapter, I examine the political economy of the music industry. To examine the production of music is to pay close attention to its social relations of production. The social relations of production are the starting point for music's modes of consumption, distribution, exchange, and circulation. While money in various forms plays a role in the production, circulation, and consumption of music, it is capital as a social relation which shapes the music commodity. Through an examination of hip-hop music, I argue that the music industry is a microcosm of the capitalist productive process. The goal of the music industry is the production of surplus value, which is the result of the exploitation of the artistic labor of songwriters, performers, and musicians. So I noted here that he ignores the 360 deals and their meaning and impact. And by that, I mean the 360 deal, just very quickly, is the advancing imperialist, in my version, encroachment on the artists that says not only will we make money, that is the studios who own the music through copyright, not only will we make the money from the sale of CDs, albums, cassettes, streams, etc., but anything you do associated with your brand. That's what the 360-degree deal. And for me, this is important because I think the goal of the music industry is more than just the production of surplus value. And that's where the colonial piece comes in. And that's where other pieces for me that I would describe in today more along the lines of counterinsurgency, of psychological warfare, but and as I was talking about then, of colonial dominance. That is the management of public opinion, the management of the colonial order, the self-concept of the colonizer. That there's more than just surplus value being generated here. There's to me, there's something immaterial happening as well, and that's where I thought internal colonialism kicked in. And by not catching that component of the 360 deal in particular, and seeming to just focus on the traditional exchange in the music industry and not this increased control and involvement through the 360, I think he's beginning already to miss the point. Anyway, consequently, this is where I do agree, and I like this point here. Consequently, the only hope for hip-hop artists under capitalism is the formation of a revolutionary union movement which struggles against class exploitation. So on this point, well, I don't know about only hope, but I really do like a focus on something practical, legal, above board, overt, something that can be conceived of. There have been various attempts historically over the last couple of decades to do something akin to this, but not in the way that he's describing. And I agree that this would be great if there was similar to what I've argued around this whole thing about buying power. Like it stop focusing on the exclusive relationship, or don't stop focusing exclusively on the particular relationship Black people have to the economy, because by so doing, it worsens Black people's relationship to the economy by having Black people try to struggle against this exclusively on their own, independent of other efforts, while trying not to, in many ways, to destroy the system, but engage it, defeats or weakens that struggle. And I think a parallel exists there, at least, you know. So this chapter is essentially a study in Marxist political economy. Our starting point is that economics cannot be separated from politics. We do not disagree there either. In cultural studies circles, it is common to place the value of music outside of commodity production, as I just did. So I'm guilty of that there. As we have seen in Chapter 1, the work of John Fiske may serve as a representative example of this approach. From this perspective, value is placed on the cultural meaning or significance of music for the listener, fan, or consumer. In order to weld culture and politics together, cultural studies must discount the significance of the political economy of culture. Now, what I wrote in my note here and why Ferguson struggles with my analysis, I include both and show their interrelationship beyond the confines of a more doctrinaire Marxist approach. But so to call me out, as we'll get to in a moment, as part of this problem, this is where I just think he gets this wrong. I mean, maybe there are others who do this and he should have picked them and used their work, but he picks me and then poorly addresses my work. In other words, he doesn't as they say, straw man the argument for me and then show where the flaw is in my work. He just throws out, as we'll see. But in this sense, I agree. I don't think he understands. This is what when I'm also thinking in terms of media studies. I'm also now, of course, thinking in terms of psychological warfare, counterinsurgency. But the point being, even when I was writing I Mix What I Like, I was thinking in terms of media studies, even psychological warfare, and the idea that there is more to the value placed on the cultural meaning of or significance of music or listener, that more value should be placed, or at least paralleling or an equal amount of value should be placed in an analysis of this problem on the cultural meaning and the significance of the music for the listener, the fan, or the consumer. That's part of the process. That's part of the mechanism of maintaining colonial control, capitalist exploitation. I just think he does not get this part right. Similarly, I thought this part was odd too, because I also he references Frank Kafka's work on black music, white business, who was a Marxist, as showing what the correct forms of scholarship on this. I also use Kafka's work to make my argument. So I that's embedded in my argument. So is the work of Thomas J. Porter, my godfather, of course, who's the social roots of Afro-American music does come out of, again, the Robert Rhodesian, because of course they worked together at Antioch College, as did my father, in the graduate program there. But I don't know that I would have to go back and read that particular essay. I don't know. I'll ask him. I don't know that. In fact, I should have done it. You know what? I don't know. I didn't think to do it before today, but I will ask Mr. Porter to what extent he feels he was, referenced here accurately, and in terms of what does he think about my argument. I don't remember us talking about this specifically, but yeah. But anyway, my point is, I agree with a lot of their analysis. So I admit I Mix What I Like does not get the Marxism right, but not because I'm trying to erase Marx or a Marxist approach. I'm just trying to, I thought, show how it worked and interacted nicely with my, at least, variation of an internal colonialism theory. Same thing with Theodore Adorno, the Frankfurt School. I've referenced, I talk about a lot. In my work, I'm a big fan of, but I think it's important to note that Adorno didn't like jazz. Adorno didn't really have an affinity for or an understanding of Black people or their experience here, which is, I think, always what's sort of the point with this sort of, again, strict doctrinaire Marxist approach, that it as much as I and others appreciate it, it's incomplete. But I don't find it being, by that, I don't mean to say that it's not of great value and should be ignored. I just think it can be worked within certain various approaches. And as I had it, the internal colonialism piece, okay. Here he says, of all the dimensions of popular music that are written about, the web-like industry behind the production of the music is oftentimes invisible to the consumer of music. And then I wrote in my note here, wow, his later criticism of me ignores that my chapter on copyright, which is what he's talking about, is one of the several in succession in the book breaking down in detail this exact web. So again, I didn't understand why I'm being the one he ends up using as an example of what's. So I look forward to, hopefully, he'll have this discussion with me, and this, like, how does my book not do this? I Mix What I Like, a mixtape manifesto. I think does a really good job of breaking down the web-like industry. I have even included diagrams and a breakdown of each step, from copyright to payola to the uh, uh, intersection and the incestuous relationships between major conglomerates and the subsidiaries that ultimately own the largest music companies. I show how that ownership ends up manipulating and determining what becomes popular music in the Black community and elsewhere. So I just don't, this part falls, again, I would have preferred he would explain here who are these who often write about but ignore this breakdown. He's talking about the monopoly character of the music industry and the big three. I talk about the big four at the time. I talk about Sony, BMG, EMI, and not only that, I go beyond what he does here. I show who owns them, the international conglomerates that own them. I show who owns Universal Music Group and Sony, and the percentage of Sony Music Corp that is Sony Music, and the percentage of Universal Music that was Vivendi, and the percentage of Warner Music Group that was the subsidiary of Blavatnik's Allied Industries. So again, I'm not understanding how I have the whole point of my chapters breakdown is so that we can look explicitly at the contract and how it is a subset of copyright, which is itself a subset of intellectual property. And then I show how intellectual property, as part of this, is one of the biggest industries in this country that doesn't make much materially, but owns everything. And I called it the ownership of thought. So then again, this ill-defined, vague they in Black cultural studies, which I don't, they rarely raise questions about the legitimacy of capitalist ownership of the music industry. I actually show how the capitalist ownership of the music industry functions within the colony. So I'm like, the paralysis of analysis is Reaganomics. Salute to the man that died during my wedding. I literally talk about sampling not only as a technology, but how sampling changed the music, that through the ownership through white law firm and corporate ownership of Black art, through the accumulation of copyright control of artists' music, I showed how, and the increase in fees that would then accompany attempts to sample, I showed how this literally changed music, taking us out of the boom bap era that required sampling from live instruments, but that people could no longer afford. And turned it into the version that we have ultimately today, something that sounds very different. So I incorporated all of that. Where would hip hop be without the production of sampling and talent of Rick Rubin, DJ Premier, Pete Rock, Prince Paul, and the Bomb Squad, among others? And then I put in my question here in my note here, but Fanon asked, where would jazz be without enslavement? So, I mean, my point is, he's saying that there is, so he's saying there's a dialectical unfolding of hip hop music that was the introduction of sampling technology. I showed that same dialectical unfolding as being European technology being repurposed by a colonized Black community that was being forcibly cut off through public policy from being taught live instruments and developing live bands. And that this led to a need for the repurposing of that existing technology to create both scratching and then sampling and so on, but how all of this became colonized and ended up benefiting to this day the same big four or big three that are in control, now big six if you connect them to the incestuous new relationship with streaming platforms. So I'm like, where... So where would hip hop production and sampling be? It was forcibly changed. There can be no more Pete Rock's, Premiers, and Prince Paul's because of what I talk about in my work. The encroachment of both copyright and specifically the damage it did to sampling. So you can't have these folks anymore. Prince Paul produced De La Soul, who was mentioned here. But Ferguson doesn't talk about what happened to De La, largely because of the sampling technology that was still managed and maintained by the corporations that would ultimately manage the copyright, that would ultimately determine that groups like De La Soul would be shelved, only to appear on streaming platforms as Dave is passing on, rest in power. So I don't, music is usually understood as an object of consumption rather than an object that is produced. Cultural production cannot be separated from the labor relations and conflicts in which it is involved. Again, how do I fit in as a target of this criticism? This is exactly my point. I said, the whole point of I Mix What I Like was to break down the process by which popularity is produced in service of colonial maintenance. So it was not, I was only identifying why we consume what we consume because it is produced. And I explained the political economy of that production. So I absolutely did not separate cultural production from labor relations or the conflicts involved. I used it to highlight. In fact, my whole point is if you understand the history of the mixtape and what happened to the mixtape and in the context in which the mixtape existed, then it was specifically to focus on the conflicts involved. So I'm like, I don't know where or why or how we end up where we end up, which is here. It is not accurate to describe the exploitation of Black artists as a postmodern form of colonialism, as Norman Kelly describes it. The exploitation of Black artists should not be described as Black artists being colonized by the major recording companies, aided by and abetted by Blacks. The music industry, by the way, that's not my argument. In fact, I know he's quoting Kelly there, but my argument, this is why I feel like he doesn't do enough to distinguish or pay attention. My argument was not that Black artists were being colonized by record companies. My point is, and my whole book and my whole argument over and over and over again, maybe to a fault, was repeatedly saying Black people are colonized. Therefore, whatever they produced has to be understood in that context. And in fact, to this day, I hate when people say XYZ is colonizing this, that, and a third. And in fact, I say it in my book. there's a line in the book somewhere that says it's not that X, Y, and Z is being colonized, it's that what X, Y, and Z is being produced in the context of colonialism. Therefore, of course, what happens in that context is part of that process. So then Ferguson writes here, exploitation is a universal phenomenon experienced by all musicians who sell their artistic labor power, whether it is major or independent music labels, whether it is major or independent music labels. Unfortunately, the analysis offered by Norman Kelly and Jared Ball ignores the fact that this is a phenomenon experienced by Black, white, Asian, and Latino musicians of all genres. No, I never did. Nowhere in my work do I deny that. That my work focuses specifically on the particular relationship that Black people have to the music industry in this country does not mean others were not being exploited. But he is factually incorrect if he is suggesting that all of these groups are equally related to this political economy of music and equally exploited for the exact same reasons. That is factually and historically incorrect. And I demonstrate that in my book by talking about the history of pop culture in this country, which has always been based on the exploitation of the performance of Blackness, first by white folks, then by Black folks, performing a version of Blackness that supports white comfort. So he can say I'm wrong in that, but to ignore the argument and just lump me in with Norman Kelly, maybe simply because he saw that I cited Kelly at one point in my book, I don't know. But that's not, but he's getting this, for me, all wrong. But rather than analysis and critique of bourgeois social relations in the music industry, hip-hop scholars like Jared Ball fall back on empty rhetoric. And then he starts throwing jabs, pun intended. Ball simply tells us that copyright ownership, for example, is a form of colonialism. Is that all I said? Is that all I said in the entire chapter about copyright? I get it, it's not a long chapter, but... Or Ball informs us that that capitalist firms are more concerned with control over popular form of colonized cultural expression than the simple extraction of material wealth and goods from a colony. Hogwash, he says. But does he explain why I said that? So if we go back a few minutes, if you remember, I already said how he ignored the fact that I do indeed include a breakdown of how the industry works and its impact. He ignored all of that, right? So for him to now come back and say that I'm only concerned with the simple extraction of that I'm only concerned with control over the popular form of colonized cultural expression, more so than the simple extraction of material wealth and goods in colony wealth from goods in the colony without explaining how I got there, that is hogwash, not my argument. His approach, his misrepresentation of my work is hogwash and is itself empty rhetoric, because the chapter, well, in fact, the chapter, the point of that particular chapter is, in fact, I do say that the companies are more interested in the management of the popular form, not because they're not interested in material wealth, but as I showed in the part that he leaves out in this chapter, is that when you break down the ownership of these companies and you see that their relationship to the conglomerates that own them, it to me begs the question. So for instance, when I said that Sony Music, one of the big three, or big four, Sony Music is only 6% of Sony Corporation, when I showed that Universal Music Group, the biggest music company in the world to this day, was only 14% at the time of Vivendi's overall operation, and when I showed that Warner Music Group, the third in the big three, or four, whatever, was only 3% of Blavatnik's overall private equity operation that owned it, I was saying if it was about making money, again, not that 14%, not that 6%, not that 3% are insignificant, but it seems to me that their interests are otherwise, that they're making a bulk of their money elsewhere. So why then all this investment in time in managing and owning all this music? My argument was it has more to do with managing the messaging and the content and its impact socially, in addition to making the money. The usage of internal colony theory to explain the class exploitation of black musicians is idealist rubbish. Plain and simple, the extraction of surplus value from commodity production via exploitation is a necessary condition for the reproduction of capital in the music industry. So correct me if I'm wrong, he's saying that the only purpose for exploiting musicians is to create capital to reproduce the social or labor relations in the music industry. I don't see how that makes my argument hogwash. If part of maintaining these social relations necessitates, by the work I cite all the time, by the very people who construct this cognitive warfare environment, the manipulation of public opinion, the manipulation of popular symbol and narrative is essential to the maintenance of these social relations. It is not simply enough to manipulate or exploit materially the labor, which obviously is happening. Similarly, by ignoring the specifics of the Black experience in this country and the relationship that race plays in all of this, and this again need of the colonizer to reaffirm itself in the reproduction of coloniality and the image of the oppressed, it just doesn't work for me to call that hogwash and rubbish again, while not doing the work, because that's it to the reference of me. So there's no further explanation of how he's arguing this based on his reading of my work. And just to be fair, I'll just want to show all of these references. In contrast to the arguments presented by Jared Ball and others, I think it is important to clearly understand that white musicians in no way benefit from Black musicians being exploited. I never said white musicians benefit from Black musicians being exploited. So again, I'm sorry, I meant to say earlier, he doesn't steel man my argument by actually exploring it, laying it out, and then showing its weaknesses. He straw mans my argument, as he does again here, quoting me out of context, not really quoting me properly at all, not investigating my work at all, just throwing me in here as he goes about making the rest of his points. So I never said that white musicians benefit. In fact, I was saying white corporations benefit and white society in general, particularly the elite, benefit from having their place as settler colonial ruling elite reaffirmed through the projection of an anti-Black popular Black image. To argue the contrary, to ignore the objective phenomenon of socialized production, where all workers sell their labor power, which is privately appropriated by the bourgeoisie. So he said white musicians don't benefit, but I said a white supremacist colony absolutely does. But again, I agree that there should be a union of workers. But as my father, I agree with he and his comrades' efforts at one point, at least in its initial state, that even within the labor movement, the union movement, there should be a coalition of Black trade unionists, or in this case, a coalition of Black hip hop artists, et cetera, and so forth. But again, I don't, Ferguson is smart enough and capable enough to properly engage my work and show where the flaws are. I found flaws in it, but what he did here is just not is inaccurate and unfair. And just quickly, just so you know, and I'll put the link in the show description if folks want to go through some of more of my discussion of this book on their own. I do just want to quickly show, and then folks, by the way, let me just do this real quick. So first of all, you can just see where, just through the chapter breakdown here, I try to lay out my colony approach through internal colonialism. Media is ideology. Education is part of this. Journalism is part of this. Revisiting the corporation and cultural industry. Where do I get the name cultural industry? From Theodore Adorno and his crew. And then I go through the whole industry. Dominant institution, the musical OPEC that own and disseminate over 95% of all music CDs in the Western world. Here's a breakdown of the music companies. Here's a breakdown of I even talk about board interlocks and show how all these boards how these companies overlap and interlock and interrelate with one another, and how they're owned and they're subsidiaries of larger conglomerates. Here's the breakdown here, and the money that the wealth that they produce. I show their ties to other elements of the corporate world. So I'm like, I don't, and then, the politics of popular culture with a quote from Thomas Porter right out the gate. It's very important to understand that music, like all art, regardless of its form, is ideological. Does that sound like someone who's only looking at this exclusively for the exploitation of labor? Come on, man. Intellectual property, copyright, and the ownership of thought. The big four. Copyright as an industry. Intellectual property as an industry. The history of copyright with its origins in 18th century modern capitalism. I would go back to its origins and give, you know what I'm saying? Come on, son, I'm doing this in like a few pages. I even shout out Marx. Copyrights are now tradable commodity. Through which our cultural heritage has been privatized. So I don't understand. I'm just not clear how he's saying I even cite Marx again, that they control the means of mental production, the consciousness industry. And I do show that when you own people's intellectual property, when you own copyright, you can manipulate their behavior. You can manipulate who benefits from what they produce. You can manipulate who sees and doesn't see what is produced. I said the copyright oligopoly's real desire is to create an international police state dedicated to the protection of their rights. So I'm even connecting it to police. Come on, man. Come on. Come on. Payola and playlists, breaking down exactly how people paid to get music into popular rotation and the impact that has both financially and otherwise. So again, Ferguson as I said to him in the email, he did me dirty. Like that was just dirty drive-by, intellectual drive-by. And I just don't get why, I'm like, so we'll see. Maybe he'll come on here and whatever. I mean, a little bit. So, okay, everybody, I thought I would stop there, and if folks, I would start a little earlier by inviting folks to, if they had any comments, questions, queries, conundrums, catechisms, cacophony, calumny. I thought we could chop it up for a while. You can jump in the chat here if you like, but or put some questions in the chat if you prefer. The control of consciousness is heavy. Wilderson's work is also about the control of consciousness and its social political materiality. I know, but that doesn't help me here. A reference to Afro-pessimism against a Marxist? You trying to get me in more trouble? So Yeah, but I said, wow, that was a wild. I don't have really much on it, but I did note here, just as another story. I hope you all note that as CoffeeZilla did a story on the other day, that the FBI has closed down its crypto investigation wing. So please, everybody, if you have yourself or anyone you know has ever considered and been caught up in this cryptoganda targeted specifically at Black and brown people, please caution them even further, because the crypto community is getting exactly what it wants, which is no oversight from the SEC, no legal oversight from the federal government. And the president and first lady have already rug pulled everybody twice with coins. They participated in the rug pull with the president of Argentina. So it's full on scam time. And even CoffeeZilla is in his like super depressed state. So, and yeah, that's how I quoted him, that Marx did talk about ideology and the means of mental production. So I just, and again, look, man, I'm clear that I Mix What I Like and all my other work has flaws. I did a long criticism of it. I don't have a problem with them being pointed out. You just got to do it though. Just quote me accurately, lay out what I actually said, and then do your thing. Show, I showed how I misquoted Marx and misrepresented Marx, and would need to correct it if there were ever to be another, update on that book, at least in terms of the point about him not being the distinction that was made in his activism. So, yeah, Melania coined to the moon. I'm trying to tell you, and it's like every it's free reign. I asked earlier, have you ever interviewed Brecht from Rev Left Radio? Y'all would have a good discussion. I'm not sure who that is actually, so no. I don't know. I don't know the work. And yeah, no. Have you read Black Star Crescent Moon, The Muslim International, and Black Freedom Beyond America by Sohail Doletsai? What is my interaction with? Seems like you find interesting. I just restarted. No, I haven't. Where did we cross paths somehow? But no, I haven't read that. One flaw of I Mix What I Like is mixing what he hates. Yeah, that's funny. Oh yeah, okay. I'll check. I'll have to check. Honestly, I don't know their work. I have to. Yeah. Oh, and if they, if they do, yeah. Say less. Yeah, say less. I'm happy to be introduced. I'd like to see maybe with the work first. Just so I could get, but the Joe Rogan of the left. Oh, word, really? Okay. So my bad. My apologies. So are you meaning to suggest that they're that popular among the left as Joe Rogan is? And I hope that you don't mean that they're as inaccurate and flawed in their representation of the left as he is of whatever he's doing. But I don't know. No, I think somebody put it the better Jared already did. I'm not nearly familiar enough with Rock Hill's work or that wing of thought, and the discussion on millennials are killing capitalism is I think the standard there. I would like to read more of Gabriel's work though. What little I've seen, I have enjoyed. That discussion on millennials was fire. The one or two that I've seen, I can't remember. but I really enjoyed them. So what's not fair? I don't know. Warren, I think the latest who was Gabriel Rockhill, but we were also talking about, is it Brett? Is that how you pronounce? Man, forgive my ignorance on that. You know, that's a hell of a compliment. What's up? That's a hell of a compliment. Okay. You know what? I started this, I have it, and I have not, I don't know, for no reason at all. I haven't finished it. Racecraft by Karen and Barbara Fields. It provides a lot of interesting points about the idea of being multiracial. I should. Okay, Guerrilla Radio offshoot. All right. My bad, everybody. And no disrespect, I clearly got some catching up to do. But the Rogan comment was funny. Okay, Brett like Brett. Okay, thank you. All right, yeah, I got to get caught up. So my bad. I thought people wanted to. Maybe I didn't. Announce it enough. Yeah, I actually don't watch VladTv. I see more of the thumbnails than anything I've ever watched. But I did go down a little bit. I've watched more of the Adam 22 stuff lately because of everybody getting arrested. And I'm just like, it's just wild how old patterns grafted themselves onto this new media space. That's all. Would like to see something useful on multiraciality. No one has gotten far. No one so far has gotten close to it. Right. Yeah, I just don't know enough of the literature. I haven't read enough to know how well it has or hasn't been dealt with. I admittedly have somewhat stayed away from a lot of what I was seeing, but I think something new needs to be written, or I need to get caught up to the latest if it has already been done, because I think this is a moment that could use some serious discussion of it, for sure. Years ago, Dr. Boyd Hawkins said, "Do not use money you cannot afford to lose dabbling with cryptocurrency." I still think this is great advice. Well, if he said that, I would go a step farther and say, don't dabble with it at all. Whether you think you have money or not, What's up, Josh?
What's up, Jared? Can you hear me?
I do. I hear you quite well.
Okay, cool. Peace.
Welcome.
Hey.
Peace.
No, I'm just tuning in. I knew this was the call-in night.
What are you saying? The only thing we've been talking about was this criticism of me by by Stephen Ferguson.
Stephen Ferguson. I always forget who that is, but
Marxist philosopher. No, okay, Marxist philosopher who was critical of my internal colonialism and took some shots at me in a book he put out a couple years ago that he just sent to me. And so I've responded a little bit and invited him. We'll see if he, joins me some point to discuss it.
You don't like internal colonialism, or just your version of it?
I don't think he likes it at all, and he lumped me in with everybody.
Okay, cool. So
and
you just don't like it.
incorrectly. Yeah,
It sounds. It sounds.
just froze.
It sounds bad. This is another African.
He is,
Okay.
although he wouldn't want you to
I
say
just had
that
to.
though.
I got to check sometimes. Okay, cool. Well, internal colonialism's kind of taboo. I feel I've been saying that a lot. I know you look at Keeanga Yamada Taylor's work, Race to Profit, and in there it's wild. Like it's this amazing outline of internal colonialism, same as like Mercer Baratheron's book Color of Money, and they walk themselves right to the conclusion, and then they look at that shit and they turn the other direction, which is really funny. So
And
I think
Keeanga
this
came
can
out again. She
outline,
spoke negatively about it. She said it's not.
I
She
know that's
doesn't.
what I'm
Yeah.
saying. She said it's not. She like writes the book, the textbook that is the closest thing that outlines the damn theory, in my opinion, on how these housing complexes are created as apartheid, is taking money from our community, all of that. And she says, yeah, this might look like colonialism, but and then just kind of walks away. And I'm like, okay, that's how you stay employed, you know. But
I didn't find her argument compelling, and then we covered at some point a couple of months ago the criticism from I think a philosophy student or PhD who wrote an article critiquing her critique of internal colonialism, and I just don't think. I mean, she just didn't take the time to make the argument. She just said it's not
right. I
good.
was going to say, what is the argument? There is no argument. Yeah. She just kind of says, yeah, this kind of works. And then, like, doesn't really do anything with it. I think it's similar in Mercer Baratheron's work where we get to, like, so there's no, solution for Africans in capitalism. Right. And she's just like, yeah, unless we reform this. And it's just like, well, so I haven't seen a good critique of internal colonialism, Jared, and it sucks because I think with Two Black and Rasul's book, we're in an era of internal neocolonialism. So if we're still fighting on the first part, I think it's hard to even theorize where we're at now. So.
I also just don't think it's necessary. I mean, I can understand there being disagreements. I just don't understand. I don't think it's necessary to condemn the approach. And I haven't, again, to your point, I haven't seen a compelling argument for why it doesn't work.
Right, which is why they're condemning the approach. You know how this goes, right? It's like it's the answer. You can't go that's not the door. We read Ori all the time. We know what scholarship is not allowed and what scholarship is allowed. But in Ori's book, Internal Colonialism's outlined it, like we said, with Grandmother Moore in the first chapter. So
what is a debate bro, and how would I be transforming into a debate bro? Jay Megatron.
I'm glad they said that. A debate bro is somebody who, first of all, have you ever seen like speech and debate in high school or anything like competitive? Yeah. So like debate bros are that, but they take it everywhere, and you'll see them online. You'll see them in Reddit. It's somebody who argues and enjoys arguing, and it doesn't even feel like they're trying to get to the truth. Like it's not a conversation. It's just about the nature of the debate. Somebody who we know has been called a debate bro, but it's a characteristic in all of us, sometimes.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we have to worry about that with me. I am very happy to not do that, but I don't see why we can't have disagreement. And let's not forget, Jay Megatron, I'm not sure when you tuned in, but I was the one called out. I just defended myself here this evening. This was purely self-defense.
And to defend a debate, bro, some things need to be debated, though. Some things are wrong, and it's okay to debate. I just think the debate bro is someone who loves to debate more than they love learning, is how I take it.
Now, quickly, I saw somebody was suggesting that Paul Gilroy had a good work on multiraciality. Please send some details on that. And then they also mentioned Jared Sexton, who it's been a while, but I interviewed him about his work on the politics of multiracialism in a anti-Black world some years ago, and then that interview ended up getting
we turned it into a write-up in this article here, but this is just moving pretty slow. In this article in Black Detroit. So folks can, if they're interested, can get that at imixwhatilike.org. I'll put the links in the show description. But this was a fun interview, actually, set of interviews. So Dream Hampton was in here. Jared Sexton is in here. Who else did I interview? Anyway, so folks can read this if they're interested in that. But if Sexton has said anything more recently, please let me know. Oh yeah, the echo. Yeah, Josh, if you can mute when you're not talking, the echo is pretty bad. Yeah, another mixed Jared at that. And Jared Sexton. So
Jared, I was gonna ask, in that research, where does he begin the analysis of like biraciality? Because I've done some research on my own of like the black codes and things, and I looked up like the term person of color, for example, and like where it even came from, and its early origins seem to be that, but still categorizes them as black. So I'm just curious where the research for his.
It's been way too long. I don't remember. Amalgamated Schemes, I think was the book, something like that. But the only thing I honestly remember from that book was the point that the category of biracial was really pushed starting in the early 90s with white women and their black children not wanting to separate them from the black community, because they wanted, as I remembered at least, they wanted the child and that one husband, but not the whole community of black people. So biracial was, so it was like the politics of the labeling that was of most interest to me and why I'm sure I remembered it. But the specifics of your question there, I don't know. Yeah, Amalgamation Schemes. Thank you, Culture 88. Yes, and they love the work. I haven't read Cinema and Black Masculinity, so that's interesting. Yeah, I would have to check that out. So yeah. Anyway, but yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't need to just
Yeah, we just vibing.
Up.
I know. Did you? I know y'all had Saturdays with Renee today. We're getting into some of the Black capitalist fantasies and Project 2025 collapsing. I don't know if you covered that a little bit tonight, but I thought that was
not tonight. No, but we talked about it before. Like, I mean, the only question I had is, and what happened to the crypto thing? Like, because they had launched that coin at the end there. But the when I looked at it at the beginning, I mean, it was just another obviously flawed attempt at whatever. So I was, I'm not surprised that it's over, and I just hope people didn't lose money, in the effort. But they all said, if I remember correctly, they all came out of the marketing world. Like all the
I was gonna say, I do think this does have implications on organizing though, because there's so many of these types, like I think we all see them, who are like bringing this marketing mindset into the work, which isn't always bad. I don't want to like just shit on it, but it's just how it works. Like all of the ways I've been seeing this Target boycott, it seems really similar as well, which is just people who can market their shit the best, put it out there, make it seem like they're the way, and they're really good at selling themselves as the way, and then it's just no kind of follow-up structure, But I think we're gonna keep seeing this, unfortunately. So, we can challenge them on that.
Yeah, no doubt. Is multiraciality more about being raised by a non-inside community parent versus phenotype? Being from New Orleans, it always seems like confusing categorization. I don't know, and it seems to be shifting. I mean, I've seen everything be applied to the situation. I've even seen many debates in front of me about where I or someone else should be placed based on how we look, how we talk, which parent was Black, who raised us, in what community were we for instance, one time there was an argument where I was being pitted against another mixed person. I had the white parent who raised me in a predominantly low income, majority Black and working class community. They had a Black parent raise them in a more affluent, upper middle class community. And then the debate became which experience comparatively made us more Black. So I don't honestly, I don't. I've always rested on. I'll stop here on. It is often in the eye of the beholder. If people are politicized in a certain way, if they have certain familial relations that are impacted or piqued by someone's presence or look, that's where that person ends up. But yeah, I honestly don't know. I don't know. And as I've gotten older, I've resisted the whole. I wanted to avoid the whole argument, honestly, just because I just didn't see it as being politically relevant or used properly politically when I did see it discussed. So I don't know.
I mean, isn't the metric love for Black people at the end of the day? Like, I think that's crazy putting y'all like in the head to head in person.
In person? Oh no!
Like that. But to be, what's funny though? That is some of the Blackest shit though, and that's what's really interesting because it gets it. One is just airing our stuff out in community, trying to figure it out. But this gets done all the time. The thing I think sometimes is like the biraciality discussion gets fetishized, but like people, I'm not Black, I'm not Haitian, I'm not this, I'm not that. You too dark, or you this that. Like it's just symptoms of colonialism at the end of the day. But I do think like sometimes in a negative way, we put too much emphasis on the biracial conversation when there's so much identity crisis that we face in the community in general. But I mean, that one-to-one, who's Blacker than who is always going to be a little wild in person.
Oh yeah, it's wild. Oh, and again, I'm overdoing it by saying it happens every semester, but I feel like at least once a year, I get one of where my students will have that discussion in the class, and I'll just be a bystander, and they'll try to figure out, where I or people like me should be placed, and it's fascinating. So I don't. Yeah, I hear you that it's fetishized. I sometimes feel like, and this is probably my own bias, that I feel like I can't avoid it. And then it is specific to how I've changed phenotypically and the political spaces I inhabit. So if I was just sort of a regular so-called person, I don't think it would play the same kind of role as it does in for me. But
yeah, well, to the point about class though, like it ends up being this thing that blurs, who are traitors among us, which I love John Henrik Clarke when he does an interview about Blackness being made up. And I'm just curious how much your students are plugged into that. But when John Henrik Clarke has the invention of white racism, I think, or some interview, and he says, we've been everything from, super light to jet black, and those people can be traitors too. I usually see this biracial discussion used to try to talk about class in the Black community, but then it actually ends up obscuring it by denying people being Black and doing traitorous things. Like it makes it like a product of their biraciality and not class. And I think that's what we've seen in this Drake Kendrick debate, which has been so interesting to me, where there's this like desire to cast Drake as a white boy. And I'm like, what's funny when you do that? What's funny when Rick Ross does that and says Drake's the white boy, the Jew, the da-da-da-da-da, is that there are white Jews down here who Rick Ross shakes hands with and won't say that shit to. So it's just really funny to me,
That's a funny point.
I see him at award ceremonies with Israel's general consulate and his mouth is shut. But Drake's the white boy and the Jew. And
are you serious?
Oh, hell yeah. 5,000 role models in Miami. Yeah. That's an organization. You look at its history down here. Rick Ross, Omari Hardwick, shout out Power, and Help Me Howie, the white man, were all the honorees of 5,000 role models. And the General Consul of Israel was there. Rick Ross was called by his government name. It was a great time, truly. But that's why when he has all that energy for Drake, another Negro, to me, that's when that biracial shit is used to hide some things, you know?
That's funny because well, obviously Drake would be the only Jew he's allowed to call out and get away with, like, no, I think that's look. No, one of the things I do always rest on is something that you've mentioned is that what often happens that I really did. It took me a while to conclude this, but part of the media studies experience that I had and the Black studies experience that I had that Brother Ferguson discredited so much earlier was that the projection onto those of us who are mixed as the singular most confused element is just that, a projection, that this is all a very confused environment, that we all talk about. All the, like, African people constantly have to go through processes of identity redefinition, self-definition, so on and so forth. So this idea that I just felt like I was born into a very confused environment, and then people are acting like I'm or we're the singular confused. Like, that's crazy. Like, everybody's out here confused. But but I will say, look, Drake is not helping us. Like, his
Oh no. But my whole thing is this, okay? Like Malcolm says, let's make it plain. When Kendrick says Drake is a white boy, and then he said his son is a black man, so let's just listen to the track. The dude don't make no sense. But if that's the case, we call him white, we treat him like a
Where you
cracker and a
broke up there a
colonizer
minute. You
and all that.
say that again.
Whatever.
If that's the case, what?
If we treat him like a colonizer, that's a joke. Drake's a colonizer. He's not a colleague, all that, right? But if he's actually black, which is what he is, then the answer is he's a coon. He's an Uncle Tom. Those are the correct terms for black people who betray us. And the issue with Kendrick Lamar calling Drake a coon or an Uncle Tom, the correct term, is that we can just flip that shit right back on him. Because to me, he's just a coon with different stripes. And that's where we get into the whole, confusion about it and the relation. But at the end of the day, who performed at the Super Bowl and who was mad about performing at the Super Bowl? It was just Drake and Kendrick both cooning. So that's how I see it. But
Well, Skip Coon put it perfectly at the beginning or months ago when he pointed out that everybody's praising Kendrick and he's working for the same companies that produce Drake. So it's in the same industry environment. So,
Jared, I know you'll appreciate this. Kendrick scored the soundtrack to Black Panther, the original one. We just forget that shit. He was getting a Disney paycheck too. Yeah, and come on, guys. Like, this is too many receipts on this man. That's why I'm frustrated with, again, the white boy discourse. The biracial distracts from the real contradictions.
The only thing, just quickly, the only other thing, that's a really good point though. But the only other thing that does get me animated in this part of the discussion is that I will not be compared to other forms of so-called mixtures. The black, white, and even the black Jew is particular, and I think does, if that's going to be isolated, like, don't throw me in a group with all of the other forms of admixtures, so-called. I think that part, But again, look, I've always felt this way. Years ago, I didn't even know what I was talking about and was asked as a grad student if I would support the undergrads at Maryland who wanted to form some biracial, multiracial student group. And I told them no, because to the extent that you were doing this as something distinct from the Black community, I don't want to support that. I didn't mean to be disrespectful of their, but part of it was you all are coming here with a group, like, you have people who are mixed black, white, you have black this, you have Latino this, that, Asian mixtures with other, I was like, these are all very fine and commendable arrangements and everybody's wonderful, but I just don't support that as a distinct political entity. I don't. Anyway, I've always struggled. I admit I just always struggled with how to, and I don't like the political manipulation of it.
Well, I think you have clarity. Like that's why it exists, to divide and conquer and hide and obscure things. But being dialectical, historical about it, as we talk about on our show, is the point, and it makes it all pretty clear if you can hold multiple things at once.
What does it mean to be mixed then? I don't. Again.
But I'm mixed. Like we all mixed with shit. I'm black and black, but that's we've taken from the
I'm
continent.
black
We
and I'm
all have
black.
to mix it.
There are
But
those
we have,
T-shirts. I would never buy
really?
one out of respect, but there was a T-shirt line that I liked. That they were like, "I'm mixed, black with black," and I was like, "That's funny."
It's fine. But at the end of the day, that's just the whole because it just went under, I believe, 23 and Me, with their technology that everyone was giving their DNA to. But with them, like it was two black shout out Black Miss had a good episode talking about black reconstruction, and if you go read that, where Du Bois is like counting the slave voyages and where people come from and all of that, and from there alone you could probably figure it out. Like most of us have 12 to 25% European admixture in there from chattel slavery. You didn't need to do a DNA test that tries to say you're Scandinavian or bullshit or whatever, right? Like historically we could figure it out. And then we would obviously be like, yeah, most of us are mixed. Most of us have a last name. Malcolm, the X replaced something, right? So this is, just history. But it gets lost, and obviously we know history is under attack. So
no, absolutely. I look at I'm just reading some of the comments. I do think, again, I agree with some of the points made earlier, questions raised earlier. I do think that there should be more. I am interested in seeing what more is being said and written about and what thoughts are being applied to this, because I do think more and more confusion is being encouraged around all of these issues. Race, identity, that specific nationality, all of that. So I would like to see more people take, and then in my classrooms in particular, I see, the conversations usually start as they did even this semester around Zendaya and, mixed portrayals of Black experiences or light skin, portrayals of Black experiences. And I admit that I'm not up to date on the latest youth targeted media, so I don't know to the extent this is happening in media targeting young people, as opposed to the media I end up consuming, where I don't think it's quite as easy to say that is occurring. But anyway, my point is, I think there's the moment is calling out for more on it, and if it's out there, I just am not aware. So I apologize to everybody for that. Is multiraciality more about being raised by oh yeah, I think I asked that one. Yeah, I raised that one. Blue vein society, those mixed race people who didn't want to identify as Black, blue vein society is a good spot to start. Yeah, I mean, but I mean, I've met, unfortunately, dark-skinned, so-called fully Black people that don't want to identify as African or be identified with the Black community. So there's a lot of trauma with all of these categories. So that's all Todd McGowan's book, Employment, Right and Left, puts the concept of surplus employment and politically relevant. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, it's just a history thing. I think what you and Todd do that I love is just trace it back like this media has existed. I think you being in your generation and being able to point to media in your generation that had this trope, right? I mean, school days, right? We talked about colorism back then. I think that's obvious that it's just gonna take new forms now. So it's Grownish and it's Blackish and it's all those shows that Kenya Barris, but you can track, from point A to point B. In fact, what I appreciate is when y'all can take it back to the 90s and to Kathy Hughes and to all these people, so I know what the Boondocks was making fun of in the first place.
Right.
But I don't think the tropes are, they change a little, but the discourse is a dialectic. It's the same thing. Why are mixed race people overrepresented in advertising? Why are Black people, unambiguously Black people, not being cast in these roles? Why is there a trope where every single sitcom has a light-skinned wife and a light-skinned daughter and a dark-skinned son? When you just comment on these trends, it ends up being a cycle, which we have on YouTube, unfortunately, where people's whole thing gets to be talking about the trend, talking about the cycle, but never tracing it to the root. So yeah, I mean, in 2050, if we haven't broken this system, we're gonna have some more of this shit, and it's gonna be in our media in a different way. I think it's interesting though with imperialism that we're having a lot of black people from the Latin diaspora come here, and so that confusion around race, if it was bad then, it's gonna be worse. It's gonna be way worse.
Because
So we
they're
adding
not,
that, you know.
no disrespect to our cousins down there, but they're not bringing with them a whole lot of political clarity on this issue too. There's a lot, their baggage they're dragging with them. So puns intended. Yo, I mean, that's why I look. I'm guilty. I've never given him his due credit, but you know, Garvey was really onto something, man. You like Garvey was, you know, like he was up against everything and trying to let folks know, like it's because it's very weird for me to even somewhat recently to go to Panama and you just see these very African people who are just not interested in that.
Well, shout out Amy Ashwood and Hubert Henry Harrison, because you know I think
Yep.
Hubert had a little more scientific understanding
I'm
of
with
our Africanness, but Garvey was onto something, and he was being informed and influenced by somebody who was really onto something. If you ask
Okay,
me.
fair,
So,
right on. Fair enough. Fair enough. I'm just saying, you know, all yeah, everybody, all of them. Yeah. Let's see, just a couple more. Let's see. Doc, you one of us, man. Anybody got a problem with that? Come see me. I don't want no smoke with James. I appreciate that, James. And that, you know, honestly, that is one of my core foundational memories. That was that, and I was too young to remember the context, but there was apparently a conflict in my neighborhood as a kid around where I belonged. And I do remember this sister, dark-skinned sister, put her arm around me and said, "He's with us." And I wish I could remember her. I wish I could shout her out to this day because it always has been a foundational experience for me, and I've never forgotten that. And it was just like, you know, it was always that little bit of a tether, even when I drifted off into some white spaces. It was like, nah, nah, nah. Well, they were always they're very quick to remind. I was like, nothing breeds black nationalism like proximity to whiteness. But
I was
but
good. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say those experiences. I hope you're sharing these experiences with your students, by the way. Like when they have these debates, when you share that,
Oh yeah.
that you know, because that explains it. But a lot of people have that traumatic one. I don't think they have that self-affirming one, like those experiences. So a lot of people do have like white people, you know, reminding them that they niggas, but that you know they're with us because of the confusion and all that we talked about. I know a lot of youth who didn't get that experience, and that leads to the trauma and the same dialectic about the tragic mulatto biraciality, whatever. But like again, knowing that had they had that experience, had they been welcomed, had they been in these community spaces that we fight for, that wouldn't be their issue. But we're losing that when we don't have a lot of people clear on who's with us and who's not with us, you know?
And that was sort of the point I was trying to raise. And there's been some, I should revisit that sometime, some of the comments that I was trying to raise last week with this discussion that and some of these other, because there's always these ongoing debates that I end up in or discussions. And that was really the point I was trying to make, that if we don't encourage the distinction, we don't encourage the treachery that people want to point to all the time. And so that was, I guess, in a nutshell, what I was trying to say. But yeah, Renee, I didn't know we met back then. But yeah, whoever that was, man, salute to her. I have never forgotten that. But so, listen, Josh, while you're here, what can you promote or point people to? What's coming next? I know you're out here busy saving the world.
I'll,
What's
with a team, with a squad of Africans. I'm hope I'm hoping someone in the chat was reminding because I was going to do that. National Black Radical Organizing Conference is coming up. Butler University, Indianapolis, May 30th through June 1st. Black Alliance for Peace, Community Movement Builders, Malcolm X Grassroots, Black Men Build are a part of other organizations, if I'm leaving them off, that are putting this together. I'll drop a link in the chat, but we should definitely be promoting this. Follow us on social media. You'll see it there. But it's going to be a great time. And then this Thursday, hold on, let me get the date.
Yeah, folks, I'll put the link in the chat for that conference happening in Indianapolis in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And please do check out.
Tickets are available. Yeah. Get that. Yeah. Yeah, get the tickets, y'all, and get your hotel room booked. And then this Thursday, on Monday, Jared, you
wait,
got your
Josh,
show coming?
My bad, Josh. We got to read emails. Renee said apparently we're missing some emails.
Uh-oh. I shouldn't have jumped on beforehand. I just got off work. I'm sorry. Thanks. Shout out, Renee. Thank you. Oh man, that feels good. Oh, that feels so good. We got Malcolm show on Monday, correct?
Yep.
It's going to be covering the diary.
Malcolm's diary, and as much as I can get through in Maya Angelou's work that Todd put me onto that I had never read before. But it's interesting to read them in tandem, as he suggested, to see you could literally read on one day what Malcolm said about the exchange, and then read in her book what she says about the interaction. So it's fun. So yeah, that'll be the centerpiece for Monday for sure.
Cool. And then Thursday, we have Black Men Builds Theory Thursday. We have Malcolm X in Kenya. I think you slid through to that last one, Jared.
I did. Late. I did. Yeah.
We got part 2 coming up because we couldn't cover it all in part 1. But we launched the Malcolm X study guide. It's fantastic. 25-year anniversary. And we're going to get into Malcolm in Kenya because there was a lot. And we had a lot of people from all over, Africans throughout the diaspora tapped in. So definitely come through. Follow Black Men Build on Instagram, or you can sign up for our newsletter and get all this information. Thanks, Jared.
No, thank you. I appreciate you coming through. And folks, I'll you know what, next week I will have a little bit more prepared as a backup. I thought there was going to be a whole, in my mind, everybody was waiting to do the call-in thing, but so I'll have a little bit more prepared as a backup. But
you got to drop it on Twitter. Did you tell people that it was call-in night? I remember from last week, but
honestly, I don't think I did enough to. You know what? I probably didn't. And I've been using Twitter less and less, trying to do Blue Sky, and I don't know. So I probably didn't do enough.
Drop it everywhere, bro. You know people are gonna come through.
I know. I'm a mess. It's bad. It's bad. It's my fault. You're right. It's my. Is there a link for the Malcolm in Kenya? Is it at Black Men Build's website?
Yeah, if you could, let me hop off cam and just drop these links in the chat real quick as you close out. And then I'll leave them there, and I'll drop them in the comments too.
Please do. No, thank you very much, Josh. Appreciate you. Always. So I saw some of the comments that were acknowledging and I'm not going to front to those who are suggesting that my inclusion in the Black community should be considered in part because of my attempt at a contribution. I appreciate that. That's definitely part of the goal. So we do what we can. As Josh noted, please do sign up and stay tuned with Black Liberation Media, and make sure you're supporting all the shows over there. I'll be back Monday again with more on Malcolm X, the 100 Years of Malcolm. And drop you talking about a studio link? I'll drop it again real quick. Here we go. I'll do better to promote the call in the next time. And then I'll also have a little bit more prepared just in case. And then I will include the links to the stuff Josh is talking about in the show description as well. But all right, what's up? Who Don Hammonds. Good to see you again.
I didn't even know you was doing the call-in thing, which does let you know you didn't do enough outreach, though.
That's my fault. I'll take that. I apologize. I'll do better next time.
Right, because I would the Reverend Dr. Jab, I was gonna hop if I'd have
Oh,
known,
wow.
it was an appointment. You know what I'm saying?
I
Likes to keep,
appreciate that.
you know what I'm saying? I likes to keep my appointments.
And Love I Am, no, we will not be live Monday, unfortunately. I had to pre-record again until the semester ends. But my classes end May 9th. So the weeks after that will be live, including May 19th. And got a special guest signed up. Someone everybody here, I promise you will love, is going to join us Monday, May 19th for the culmination of 100 years of Malcolm. But brother, apologies, Uhuru.
Nah.
Don Hammonds, the full name. No, I'm just playing.
Yeah. So I'm here organizationally. I represent the Black is Back Coalition's Youth and
Right.
Student Working Group. Join us. Our regular meetings are Mondays at 0900 Cali time, if you can. And just personally, I'm over here on the West Side, Orange County, California. I'm a student studying to become a teacher. At the community college and the secondary level, whichever gets me tenure first.
Word up. Right on. So is there a link you can share
Oh,
for?
there most definitely is. Give me 1 second to copy and paste.
Let's see what happened here. The chat told last week's callers they were too long-winded. Now folks are shook. Oh wow, is that what happened? Don is adorbs. Renee says, Don, I owe some follow-up. I just remembered. Ooh.
Yeah. Look, I don't never take that to heart. We all run around like decapitated chickens. I never take that to heart. I'm trying to put stuff. Okay, yeah, there we go. Okay, and then I can send it directly to the good Reverend Doctor.
Okay, all right. So
Dude, technology, that's one of the things that I've been discovering in my organizing. Technology is just, it's wild. Because I fried my MacBook, and that's our contact list. If you are a student, if you are a faculty member at any level, if you are a concerned parent, especially our mothers, um, we've made it a point to prioritize reinforcing the efforts of our mothers, who are often at the forefront of directly keeping the baby safe. They produce the workers, and they are the first teachers, and everybody that's trying to be an educator, you are basically trying to get back to what your mama was doing first. So, like I said, we prioritize reinforcing the mothers and stuff like that. But our mission is to win Black youth and students to the national agenda. And we also consider, like I said, instructors, everybody. If you are a PhD or a PhD student, we need you there as well. Yeah, and that's one thing that I wanted to actually talk to you about, Dr. Jab. Like, I think that in our organizing or our trying to win students, and it's a twofold question. So I think our attempt to win students often fails because of the separation that we create between the instructors and the students. And I mean that at every level. And I say that to also ask you, where are the students, right? As a person that's in the movement, trying to build and bring the other students into the movement, where they at?
So again, my engagement is specifically with Morgan State students, and from these are mostly African world diaspora working class students, and many from Baltimore. I don't where they are. You're asking politically, I'm assuming, is or no?
No, I mean, as a person I'm literally trying to win,
You
class.
mean physically? Uh-oh.
right? I'm trying to keep up with. Yeah, so I'm trying to be like, y'all come on through, and it's, I guess there's a busy thing. So I think I mean physically and politically.
Yeah, I mean, when we discuss things, the impression I get is that there's, as usual, a core of students, a small group that want to be involved, some very radically politically. But for the most part, students, I think, sure. Anyway, for the most part, I think the students that I end up with are frustrated. They are confused in terms of what to do about what they think is wrong with the world. I think they, of course, are also encouraged to all kinds of forms of uh, non-political engagement. So much energy on the campus, and from what I gather, even from their home lives, is encouraging them not to engage, to get the degree, to get to the middle class, to get the bag, and that's and because there's not. I mean, in fact, we always, even again this week, we talk about it in my Black Studies course, that the Black Studies is itself was imposed upon the university by movements starting in the community. Without those movements, all we're getting now are isolated middle class aspiring students who are under politicized, depoliticized, and encouraged away from politicization. So I think it's very difficult. I would be interested, so I invite, there's, usually I have members of BAP and the AAPRP come in and speak to my students every semester. I don't know to what extent they get follow up from the students, but my students
Oh, that's a
often
good point
express.
of research.
That would be a good point of research. I mean, my students always express some sort of appreciation for their visits and an interest in their visits. And the presentations, I will say, have gotten increasingly better in terms of engaging the students themselves.
Yeah, but who
Yeah.
who scanned the QR code? How many? Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't have that information. I would be
Oh no, I
interested
didn't
in
mean that.
following up.
I'm
No,
not
I know.
just.
But I'm saying I can see about following up and see what comes of that. But you're right. So
Mhm.
other than that, I don't know where they
Okay.
are. Yeah.
And then kind of honestly, I'm I'm an avid watcher, and Renee is who got me on in that, like making sure that all of the resources and the faculties and forces available to you, and that also means like keeping track of the data. Data is important. Data is very, very important. That's why I'm very interested in doing the statistics with the people thing, but I'm trying to do it in a way that brings the campus to the people and the people to the campus. So maybe having an instructor or a math club sit on a panel with Renee, and we simply discuss, well, which it is that in this era of so-called misinformation, which it is, what's important, how do I determine that, and how do I determine that? Just that's that needs to happen. Um, and then so I got next is a messy question, and it has to do with the field. So eh, you know as I've said in the chat, and I'm so very grateful that I finally get the opportunity to say this to you on record, on the camera, and because I'll be saying this in the chat every time. So I want the prefix, and I'm also open to being proven wrong. Like if this is a contradiction, get it to me. Yeah, I'm a very big self-reflection type of person, but as it stands, I want the prefix. I want the prefix Afro stricken from record. And follow up question like, I don't see, what do you even do with as a person, right? I'm community college going to the CSU, but because I have principle, I know that it's the role of the African intellectual to solve the problems, contradictions of society, and for me that looks like leadership, the leadership of the Office of Economic Development and Finance of the African People's Socialist Party. Me personally, me and my household. So I'm looking and I'm saying, okay, I'm going to get my bachelor's in this to get this, and this will allow me to offer ANWO, the African National Women's Organization, this type of professional support to their initiatives. And they do things like they got the Stop CPS, the Arrest CPS initiative. Search that up, y'all, if y'all listening. Which cameras we working with here? Yes, search that up. That's hashtag Arrest CPS. Thank you. And then, with my master's, I'm gonna, get my certification and the master's in education, which will allow me to, teach both at the community college level and at the secondary level. Allow me and incubate maybe a space possibly for an independent school thing. And all while that's going, I can work on the PhD and the JD at the same time. Finally, to be able to offer, the entire movement, right, legal service. I know that, but that's easy for me to ascertain. However, how do you do that if undergrad you going with Africana study? Like, you can't. What can you do? Literally, I'm trying to see. When does it become viable? Not to the movement. Forget the movement. I'm trying to forget all of that. You can't do nothing with that until you get the master's.
So I'm not sure
what do you do? If I'm following the Africana Studies undergrad, graduate, PhD, but what can I do at the undergrad level to even, because for me, right, in the path that I laid out, at every level, I could stop for a while and make some money. You know what I'm saying? Or at least begin the tenure pursuit. Right.
So, wait, are you
undergrad? If I finish undergrad with a bachelor's in Africana Studies, what am I doing next? Besides school?
In terms of employment, usually people will talk about how Black studies can inform your work in other fields. If you're leaving, particularly after the undergraduate level, and you don't have a goal of being a professor or a teacher, then it's usually talked about in terms of how it just positively informs your work in whatever field you go in, having a better understanding of how African people and Black people and race have played a role and are impacted by that field. I do remember one of my wife's law school attorneys. I always quote this, that he said the cost of law school is he said, a conspiracy, the goal of which is to make sure you cannot use your degree to work for the people because you're in such debt that you are forced to serve corporate America to chase the money to recoup the cost. So in terms of the goal, as I heard you saying, to become a people's lawyer, that's just something to consider as you go through the process. Try to incur as little debt as possible, even as difficult as that may be, and to make it more possible for you to do the work for the people that you say you want to do. And then Africana Studies would be something that could inform that law degree. I think having, if you especially are wanting to do law that's involving service for Black and world majority people, it would be a great
law.
Oh, I mean, I would think, yeah. I mean, that's where I think Africana Studies again comes in secondary to the goal of teaching and all of that. It becomes of great value.
May I interject the unhinged thought?
And just quickly, Don, I'm happy to, but I do have somebody else has joined and wants to join,
good.
so I want to give them a chance too. But
okay, quickly,
yeah.
Hey, America, I need to talk to you. Come on in here and sit down real quick. Hey, how your mom and them? Good. education costs is a social construct, baby. Take all of that money and don't pay it back. What they gonna do? Send them motherfucking letters to the address they think my mama living at? The fuck? Just take it and throw it away in your mind. Smoke it away. When they send the letter, well, no, don't put no paper with no ink and nothing you smoking. But you get what I'm saying.
So I will, I don't want to discourage whatever you're suggesting. However, just to add, that was my plan. All through grad school, I was consciously saying, I'm going to take all this money, use it to give me a relaxed, relatively speaking, graduate experience, and I'm never going to pay it back. Maybe this is just a sign of my bourgeois evolution, which is fine. Take it with a grain of salt. But I will say, I don't know that I never fully regretted that, because I did really love my graduate experience.
Mm-hmm.
But it is not as simple as you can just get away from it forever. They find you, they harass you. It can become a problem if you want things like other loans,
Well,
so and in some cases, even jobs will affect your employment if they know you're trying to come in with enormous debt. So
right.
I just throw that out there to do it.
Can I ask? I'm just, because I'm literally now I'm curious, right? Well, not curious. This definitely involves my livelihood. So the positions that I'm looking at, because I want to come back and again work in the schools and stuff like that, and I plan on dying single with no kids. That $5,000 a month that like a professor, a tenure, to young single with no kids,
$5,000 a month. Congratulations, salute.
California.
Yeah, salute.
But or that salary, that level, right?
Because I'm just saying, I'm damn near 20 years in, and I don't make $5,000 a month. So congratulations. I don't even gross $5,000 a month.
Oh, I'm looking at dean positions. I'm not playing with y'all. But yeah, I'm not playing. I'm already.
It's not that I'm just saying, but I don't know that I'm clear that you're clear on the path. However,
I'm saying when you get there, you're gonna be so good. Again, these are high thoughts. Please do not take me seriously, America.
Because the dean, usually you're not gonna become a dean, until you are well into your career. So I'm just saying,
Right. Okay, so let's take it back down to reality. I'm saying, if I graduate and I'm doing the good job searching, right? I think I'm gonna be making enough money, single with no kids, right? That if they want to go on and garnish that, even if it's, let's realistically say it's $2,000 a month. I don't have much aspirations for life. I don't even want no four-legged child.
Again, all I can say is having attained this age, reached this age, my interests, my goals have changed. To a certain extent, what I thought I would have been happy with at one point, not so much, specifically for me, at least around the family part. But even in terms of what I thought my career would be like, I would not at this point in my career, at this age, want to be forced to jump around academically without tenure, I admit that. So all I'm saying is I love it. Just something to consider.
Several classes at several colleges, I will lay on the ground and cry.
It's a lot. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. If when you and then when you are of a certain age and a certain declining health and whatnot, to be having to go through different, and all that. So that's all I'm saying. But Look, I will
Capitalism
say
won.
the goal to be working in service of your people is admirable. And I do think you can do that even as you pursue a career. I just think, I would encourage folks, yourself included, to think about ways to, I don't know, it's such a contradiction. I was going to say to think about ways to minimize your debt as you go through these experiences. But at the same time, I look back, even before we got our debt taken away, even when I was in the thick of not being able to repay it, it was still for me worth it.
Hmm.
But
Look,
listen,
America, Jab trying to get
yeah,
me
let
out
me
of
let
here.
yeah,
Y'all,
well, let me because someone else has been waiting. And I thought I heard other people trying to get in, but let me just
oh,
I just want
well,
to
because I
be
was
my
just gonna tell America,
sure.
tell the remix family I done fried my MacBook with a coffee spill. Y'all know
Oh
the,
no.
but the air is cheaper. The new air is
Oh
not a
man.
car, and I won't be paying full funds for no Apple computer. I'm fist to figure out a way to, you know what I'm saying, but it's at least gonna require a down payment. If you understand what I'm saying, peoples. So
Yeah.
yes, Uhuru and Black
Uhuru.
is
Thank you.
back.
Black is back. Thank you very much for coming through, and good luck getting that computer taken care of. That's oh my God, that's terrible. Very sorry to hear that. All right, folks, please do, while we're still here, like, share, subscribe, do all those things. And let me bring up Alchemy Beats. Am I saying welcome? I don't hear you, so you might need to unmute. Try
I
again.
can't hear you.
Oh,
Can you
I
hear
don't
me?
know. Why don't you hear me? I do hear you now, but you should hear
Here,
me.
can you put him on your phone?
You should definitely hear me. So
Um,
I don't know. Yeah,
I am unmuted. Can you hear
I
me
think
now?
there's some delay. I do hear you, but I don't think you hear me in time.
Okay, you know what? I'm sorry about that, Jab. I'm hearing you on someone else's phone, my partner. Um, but I think we can make this work. Okay. Um, there's probably a little bit of a lag, but first of all, greetings. I'm a big fan of yours and our radical black family and revolutionary, black left. But basically, I'm calling you to say it's my partner's birthday tonight. I was wondering if you'd wish her happy birthday, and yeah, I just wanted to tell you how much your platform means to me, and how much I'm appreciative of you guys and you and your comrades' work.
Thank you very much. And I don't know the name, but happy birthday to your partner. Thank you very much for supporting and tuning in, and happy birthday. Many more. Feliz Navidad. Feliz cumpleaños. Sorry. Feliz cumpleaños. Navidad.
You know what? You know what, Dr. Jab? I'm gonna leave and then join right back and see if the problems are worked out.
Okay. All right. That was yeah, definitely appreciate that. I need a Cameo account. I don't know what that is. What do you mean respond? Respond to what? What am I missing? What am I missing? I don't know. So yeah, definitely. No, no. Okay, definitely. Follow up and support all of these platforms. Black Liberation Media in particular. Hold on, here we go. Let's try again. Oh, I thought you were somebody else. Look who it is. The better Jared, the best Jared. What's up,
Definitely
man?
not the better one. Am I on the right mic? Let me make sure my audio's right.
Yes, I hear you. Yeah.
Hang on. That should be better.
Oh, that is better. Yeah, actually, that is better. Hey, hold on. Let me bring Alchemy up while you're here. Let me, because
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted what Go ahead. Try. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Is that Jared Ware from Millennials Are Killing Capitalism?
It is. Look who it is.
Hey guys, Dr. Jab, I can hear you. I see you and hear you, Jared Ware. You have an amazing platform. I've been learning so much from your nexus of revolutionary information. I really love your project. I'm a millennial too who hates capitalism, Marxist-Leninist, and yeah, it's great to see both of you. But Dr. Jab, I'm so sorry about earlier. It's my partner's birthday. She's a revolutionary Boricua. Her name is Angie. My name is Alchemy. You can call me that. And we're huge fans of yours. So first of all,
Hi, Dr.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank
Many
you.
more. Thank you both for tuning in.
I don't know what to tell. Dr. Ball, I've been reading your first book, the Myth of Black Buying Power. It is a thriller. I love it. I'm learning a lot. I'm also learning about through Comrade Dr. Horn. He's legendary. Yeah, I don't know what else to say, but you guys are awesome. Thank you so much. And I love this community. That's all I got.
Thank you very much, and enjoy your birthday.
thank you, Dr. Jab. Honestly, I don't know how much time you guys have left in your stream or whatnot. I know you may have seen me before in your comment section, nerding out, writing huge paragraphs about dialectical materialism. That's kind of my milieu, if it were, as you were, that I've been studying, self-studying lately. But I don't know what kind of format tonight's stream is, but if you didn't mind, I actually wanted to come on just to share with you a little bit of what I've been learning about dialectical materialism, and maybe that can enrich some conversations or provide a generative source of insight, perhaps.
Sure.
Okay.
Jared, you got time for this?
Yeah. We
No,
do
I'm
have
talking. Yeah, just making sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to take too much of y'all's time either, but again, big fans. You said last week in your stream that you'd be having more folks on, so we just had to hop on. So basically, Jab, I know there's a lot of misunderstandings and not sufficient comprehension of dialectical materialism and scientific socialism in our part of the world due to obvious reasons, capitalist superstructure, repression of revolutionary thought, bastardization of, Marxist tradition, right? But I've been learning a lot from our Vietnamese brothers and sisters' curriculum of dialectical materialism and materialist dialectics. And from Comrade Luna Oi, shout out to Luna Oi and her channel. She translated the Vietnamese textbook for dialectical materialism for basically secondary school students. And I've been basically, forgive my profanity, but I've been studying the shit out of it for like 2-3 years now, as well as doing a lot of independent study on my own of some USSR era materialist dialectics books, even playing around with DeepSeek a little bit. So basically, Jared and Dr. Ball, what I usually tell people, my kind of elevator pitch for what is dialectical materialism, Alchemy? What's it good for? I say this: there's two principles that are fundamental that I sometimes see even lacking in our comrades, you guys. And if we understand these two principles, it demystifies a lot of the mystification around materialist dialectics. So I'll share that with you guys. This is kind of my little tidbit I want to share with you guys tonight. Materialist dialectics is two things. Everything is defined by their relationships, and everything is changing all the time due to internal and external relationships. That's in my experience, one of the most simple ways to boil it down. I know, Dr. Ball, you've had various folks talking about dialectical materialism, using it like not just you and Comrade Josh in your Materialist Dialectics Atheist series, which I hope to see more of. I'm a huge fan of. But you had a comrade on. I can't remember his name, but he and you got into a little bit of a rant right at the beginning of your talk about how art can be understood through dialectical materialism. I'm not sure if you remember that stream.
In Tume, and then you got to make sure you see the series he did with Jared regarding Cedric Robinson's work.
I absolutely will. I'm a huge. I know Cedric Robinson is a wealth of knowledge, and especially in the Black radical tradition too. So, and I love Comrade Ntoumi and all of his thoughts. So I would love to see that, Jared. But basically, yeah. So it's those two principles, Dr. Ball. Basically, they have names. Everything is defined by their relationships in the universe. Every phenomenon, every person, every art piece, every event in history is defined by their internal and external relationships. That's called the principle of general relationships. And the second principle, what I told you too, everything's changing all the time. We call it development in materialist dialectics, but I won't get into the difference right now. Development or change is caused by internal contradictions. What's a contradiction? This gets into the 3 laws of materialist dialectics, you guys, but basically a contradiction is a temporary unity of opposing forces. They exist in everything. My people, I'm Korean and Japanese, Okinawan, by the way, as you see in all my comments. We had our own conception of this, yin yang, right, in Taoism. Indigenous peoples in the Americas, Dr. Jab, and even African peoples. I've been really on a kick lately of trying to understand indigenous peoples of the world's own indigenous ontological philosophical systems that may resemble materialist dialectics. You and I have to have much longer talks about these in the future, because you've talked about things and brought up comments specifically relating to indigenous ontologies and how they relate to spirals, and how that's a very important concept in geometric, basically geometric tool in materialist dialectics too. There's too many opportunities for us to have many generative conversations about that in the future. But essentially, guys, in addition to the 2 principles I told you, everything's changing all the time because of mutual impacts or contradictions, and everything's defined by their relationships. There's 3 laws to understand, and then pretty much you've understand the meat of it. And then we can get into the dialectical category pairs in another talk. That's been the bulk of my self-research lately. But basically, you guys have probably heard this being Marxist yourselves, but for your audience as well. In addition to these 2 principles, the principle of general relationships and the principle of development, the most important things in materialist dialectics are 3 laws, the 3 laws of universal motion. The law of transformation of quantity to quality. Shout out to you, Renee. Shout out to all of our New Jersey and Jamaican diaspora family. I'm a huge fan of yours as well. The law of transformation of quantity to quality, the law of unity of contradiction of opposites, and the law of the negation of the negation. Quite simply, this is what they are. Everything's changing all the time, but changes only happen as quality shifts that only occur once enough quantity shifts have built up. We can get into that later. 2, everything in the universe, galaxies, atoms, political events, political parties, Killer Mike, are defined by contradictions. Everything is defined by temporary unity of opposing sides, as well as the negation. The negation is basically when a contradiction is resolved, and all contradictions are infinitely diverse and are resolved in a variety of infinitely diverse ways. When a contradiction is resolved, another one will spring forth. And when that contradiction gets resolved, whatever's left over will resemble the form 2 contradictions ago. It's kind of the most hard to understand. We can get into that later. But basically, everything's changing all the time, and things only change once enough quantity shifts have built up, like raising the amount of degrees centigrade for water to eventually turn into steam, right? That's an example of a quantity to quality.
This was literally made as a point to me at my campaign meeting the other day, because I mentioned, I said, because I couldn't answer a question in detail about my local community's inner workings. So I said, but I can learn them. If I can explain dialectical materialism to a first year student, I'm sure I could figure out how the stream restoration project here in Colombia is going to work.
Exactly. So, and you know what, Jab? This is the best kind of philosophy, because it's meant to solve real life problems, not just ivory tower, let's think our way into revolution kind of stuff. It's meant to solve working class people, on the ground, colonized people's material obstacles that we face due to structures and systems of oppression. I want us hopefully to get into more talks like these later. I don't want to take too much of y'all's time.
No, let's be in touch. And Renee is already talking about a Saturday, so
oh my God! I just want you to know, you and Renee have such a high place of respect for me that the fact that anything I'm saying here, just a fan of you guys, that you guys get me through my working class life every week, just hearing you guys' content, that means more than you can understand. Know. So I really hope you understand how much I appreciate you and Renee and Jared Ware and your whole constellation of radical, basically radical media collectives, and I want to end on this, Dr. Ball, and I'll let you guys get back to your night. Thank you so much for your time. Everyone, I'm sorry if I've confused anyone or was too short or not enough detailed or too detailed enough for this kind of stuff. I just want to share with Dr. Ball some of what I've been passionate about and how our revolutionary interests overlap, let's say. But I want to end on this, Dr. Jab. I'm a huge fan of yours. I got started listening to you and Kalanji and Joy James talk about George Jackson and Afro-pessimism with Frank Wilderson III. We really have to have a conversation, you and me, about Afro-pessimism. I know it's controversial, but as an Asian colonized person, I feel like there's perspectives that one can give from basically a non-white and a non-African perspective that may, if not validate Afro-pessimism, provide extremely generative discussion points for other aspects like global anti-blackness and why different cultures may be anti-Black, even if we didn't have a history of trafficking Africans like in the Ma'afa, like what white Europeans did, and how that may have been dialectically influenced by what Western Europeans did and the global hegemonic structure they've created with whiteness. But we had our own version of it before. There's too many things to talk about this right now, but that's where I initially started getting into your content. And this is what I want to end with, Dr. Ball. From all of what I've seen from you and your practice and your theory, I've often seen whenever you bring up dialectical materialism, and as an atheist and a Black revolutionary, I sometimes see, forgive me if I'm mischaracterizing, but sometimes you'll say like, I don't know if I understand this well enough, or I think I'm applying it correctly, or I try to. Honestly, Dr. Ball, this doesn't have to mean anything to you guys. I'm just a 30-some-year-old, born in the suburbs, found my revolutionary path on my own through a lot of lucky breaks in my life. But basically what I want to say is, through my own understanding, I've come as an Asian American to dialectical materialism. Everything you always bring up when you be dialectical is exactly spot on to dialectics. When you were just random examples, when you debate people about, as an atheist, you still see value in religion as a social tool. What Geechee said, a container for revolutionary content, right? That is dialectical. When you say things like, when you have to deal with the contradiction, when you have to deal with oppositions that don't have to be antagonistic contradictions between your people or subsections of our African brothers and sisters community, when you deal with the back and forth of, this may not be necessarily in line with our long-term goals, but our short-term conditions necessitate that we have to take a tactical, approach, to what we need to, achieve our ends. You are always being dialectical, Jab, in exactly the way I understand to be dialectical, which is understand a thing based on its relationships. Mm-hmm. Don't understand something as a frozen object in time, right? You have to understand things as a process. I'm sure you guys already know that about materialist dialectics, but I just want to say, Dr. Jab, I never see any warrant for when you question whether or not you have a grasp or an application of materialist dialectic methodology. I hear the exact same kind of conclusions I'd be coming to, never mind that it's just humbled me saying this, but I never see where you're not being dialectical when you question whether or not you are or not. So for what it's worth, I just wanted to share that with you.
Listen, I appreciate all of this. Thank you very much to the both of you. Many happy birthdays to come as well. And please follow up and we'll continue the conversation. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Love you, Jared Ware. Yes. Love you, Dr. Ball. Sorry for taking so much time.
No, it's all good.
Happy
Peace, you two. Enjoy yourselves.
birthday.
Happy birthday. Thank you very much.
Take care.
And as the chat did say, I mean, that there was a lot of,
You know nothing about that. Now listen.
I want him to
That's called my
and send them a
my bad. Say it again.
Oh, I was gonna say I want him to create TikToks and send them to my teenager. I think it would help.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, I don't know what your time is like, or if you had, but a couple other people, please, folks, Poncho, Shitty Matcha, hold on a second, or we can all chop it up. But it's good to see you. This was a nice surprise.
Good to see you too, man. These Saturdays are great. I can be quick. I mean, I was just kind of wondering. You made a comment earlier on tonight about talking about the polemical response to your book, to I Mix What I Like in Mixtape Manifesto, and you mentioned that you kind of more lean into talking about counterinsurgency and psychological warfare as opposed to looking at things in terms of internal colonialism these days. And maybe that was just kind of, I was just curious why, or like what the, if that's a, like the rationale for that shift.
No, I appreciate. No, I didn't mean to. So thank you. No, I didn't mean to suggest that I don't view things the same way in terms of colonialism. I just have been enjoying the use of that language more, I think, is really all I meant. And if anything, I think that the whole argument around counterinsurgency, again, following you, Dylan, Ori, and others, it makes the internal colonial argument more legit, because it's saying that these are the same tactics that would be applied to a traditional colony being applied here. So yeah, I didn't mean to suggest one was replacing the other. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think it's just it's something that I think about a lot, because the like counterinsurgency to me is kind of it's a narrative shift by imperial powers. Like, why does it come about? It comes about with the language of it. Why does this language come about? It comes about really, I think, primarily, like a lot of times people trace it to the Philippines. And it was the United States has always been inconvenient for the United States to call itself a colonizing power, right? And so you say we're doing something else. We're doing pacification. We're doing counterinsurgency. We're doing um, so you create kind of other language to justify your policing operations or whatever in you know Puerto Rico or Cuba, um, the Philippines, and so on. And I think for the UK at a certain point, it became similarly inconvenient, right? So it became inconvenient for them to talk about suppressing the Mau Mau revolution strictly through a lens of a colonial power, right? And so then you start to see these people starting to talk about low intensity operations, counterinsurgency, et cetera. But when you read the people who actually write these books, like the military folks like Kitson and so on, like, they're like, they're basically all just like, well, this is colonialism, or we've learned this through, or we're in this colony doing this thing. And so Kitson he understands that Kenya is a British colony when he's there. Um, and so I think one of the things that's kind of interesting is, again, it's a language that has spread into the academy. It develops out of the military industrial complex. um and even with a lot of another thing that they also say often is that what we're really talking about is counter-revolutionary warfare. But we can't really say that because people have too many positive associations with revolution. And so there's that. There's also, I will say, rereading Sharice Burton Stelly's book, she talks about the subversive tradition in U.S. statecraft, and that's really interesting to me too, just because, like, um, before you get to the stage, counterinsurgency does kind of imply that there is an insurgency. And often in the United States, when we're talking about this, it's not really clear. And I fall victim to this too, that there is some kind of insurgency that's being suppressed. It's like, no, they're actually suppressing before any kind of insurgency develops, which again is something that, Kitson talks about, of like, we have to get in there and disrupt this stuff before it even gets to the phase where, even the non-violent phase of protest, we have to disrupt before that. So anyway, it's an open question for me, but I think it's like we always need to hold these things together. And I think also there's a lot done by, I think, the work of internal colonialism thesis, and like the work of New Africans, and others, but, like, they're pointing often to a moment in history, often like the end of, formal slavery, when there was a possibility for self-determination for Black people, and that being denied, intentionally suppressed, right? And so and it never is not suppressed, right? There's never been some reckoning where it's like, well, actually, we've done all this stuff, and we need to, you know, provide some form of reparations or some form of, you know, a, a choice, or, so that was never done. So I think that, I don't know. I mean, I'm not, I understand some of the difficulties with internal colonialism, especially with the, Black people being so dispersed, African people being so dispersed within the country now, that it's, the Amilcar Cabral question of like, if the territory is not totally confined and stuff like that. It doesn't have borders. But I still think that a lot of the counterinsurgency stuff gets used also to talk about a quite general condition. Like, we had the conversation with Neo Klaus on pacification, and he's taking it back to Rome and Greece and stuff like that, and I mean, those societies are fucked up too. But the so there's something built into the liberal state, to the nation state concept in terms of counterinsurgency that's kind of always been a part of how they've developed this form. And I think, I guess my worry in terms of focusing too hard on just counterinsurgency is that it kind of can become just everybody's facing the same problems here. And I do think there's something specific about the experience of African people in the United States, you know. So yeah.
100% agree. So this is a classic case of they're not talking about me-ism. Because I heard you make a similar point on one of your shows, and when I was listening, I was like, that's not me, because I'm in my mind using the reference for a very specific reason to connect it to the colonial experience. But what you're saying is 100%. So I'm going to because I even had, if I understand you correctly, I had a similar reaction to have a similar reaction to all of the language of racial capitalism. Not that it's wrong, not that it doesn't have an important history, but for the similar reason, like, why do we need this when colonialism works perfectly to encompass all of the experience? But no, 100%. So I'm going to make an immediate shift, because I didn't, again, in my mind, it was pointing to the colonial relationship, and this was buttressing it. But I think you make what you're saying is a really good point. It's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I wasn't raising it as a critique. It was a question just because you raised it earlier on, and I think that it's still. I mean, Ori and I have talked about this to some extent too. Like, how much? I mean, there's all these issues with engaging counterinsurgency literature, because you're literally reading the enemy's books, right? And so then you have to read it really distrustfully. You have to be very critical as you're going through it. But I think that it's fascinating to me on its face, like just what they say that they're doing, and they're, and I know you know this and all the stuff you read too and talk about, like, I mean, they're just very clear on like, we'll kill these people, and these other people, we might have to kill some of them too. But really, we want to make people like us. Like, it's just sinister, and they don't even see it that way. They're just very. So that's why I'm interested, definitely, in the world of counterinsurgency. But I've been critiqued on it too. I've been critiqued on it too from people of saying, like, what you're talking about is counter revolution, or you're talking about, and you're contributing to a lack of clarity for people by, basically taking this up on its own terms, even though I'm always trying to read it against the grain, So yeah,
can I just show you? I'm not going to play anything because I don't have it queued up. But one of the YouTube, one of the areas that I've devolved into is admittedly the special forces community of YouTube. And on this guy's channel, I got to give him credit. It's well produced. He's even kind of funny. He talks about a former Green Beret talking about, and in this video, he's saying what YouTube encourages in a misunderstanding of the special forces community. And one of his main points in this is that the main job of special forces is not to go on YouTube and create these fantasies about Navy SEALs and all this other stuff. And it's not even to be in direct conflict. In fact, a section of the video, he stops to talk about, we're not even in combat. A lot of our work is strictly, I forgot the language he's using, but it's in messaging, it's in communicating, it's in narrative development, it's in hearts and minds, it's in, turning local to be colonized communities into a military force against their own people. That's what they're usually going in for. They're not even trying to get into combat. And a lot of the stories like Lone Survivor and all these other movies that get turned into movies are fake stories that were based in what was supposed to be a quiet insertion to manipulate
people to work against their own communities. So anyway, I don't know where I just thought that was it was fascinating. But I don't I, you I, I however you meant it, I don't mind taking it as a criticism and a good one. I think it's I like what you're saying and I appreciate it. So and again, I thought I understood it, but in my mind, I was strictly the one. I was like the woman in the club listening to the song with all the B references, talking about they're not talking about me, or you know,
Yeah.
the that's not they're not talking about me, you know. But I was definitely So no, that's a really good point, man.
No, yeah, I mean, I just think that the thing about it, right, is that we want to maintain, and this is the challenge, and you do this in all your work, but we want to maintain the lineages of actual revolutionary politics within the work that we do, you know, and I think that there's always a danger when we take on, you know, even the enemy's language too much. I mean, like, so somebody raised this point to me once. They were like, insurgency itself is their term. Right? So our aspiration is not to be insurgents, it's to be revolutionaries, or it's to be, you know, whatever people's is.
See, no, you're right. So like I liked the insurgent reference because of when I've those early newspaper reports calling Nat Turner and his crew insurgents. So I like,
but it's the newspaper reports
right.
that are saying that.
They are. You're right. It's the newspaper saying it. But I took it as to say like he's a revolutionary. So yeah,
Right.
I am. But you're right. No, you are. What you're saying is exactly right. I really.
All right, man.
You're right.
I just wanted to say that I appreciate everything that you're doing. These Saturdays are a lot of fun, and also shout out to Renee. You guys did a great job this morning too. It's good to see you, man. I appreciate everything you're doing.
Likewise, man. Definitely appreciate you. Thank you very much. This was a pleasant surprise. Take good care.
All right.
And folks, you see why I praise millennials are killing capitalism all the time. That was that's what you get. A very well thought out, studied set of questions. So salute. Poncho, my man.
Hey,
long time, man.
I just wanted to fan out for a minute. It is. I just wanted to fan out for a minute. That was so awesome. Those young people coming on, and that was beautiful. So I want to do the same thing. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. First time caller.
Nah, man. Likewise.
Big fan.
Long time listener, first time caller. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
No, but you're not. So folks know, Poncho and I have worked together, got a long history of approaching hip hop in a similar way. His work is great. I'll link to it. I can't wait to get the new book. So anyway, good to see you again, man.
Appreciate it. I put in the chat. I still every year use your book. I mix what I like. I think it's essential. So I don't know what that other dude was talking about. I have no idea what he was talking about. Seem willfully ignorant to me, but yeah. One of the things I chop it up with Tafari on a regular basis. We go to the same coffee shop, hang out. Our families know each other, and of course
that's very dope.
He did a lot of good photography for my book. That's one of his photos, but there's like 8 or 9 of his photos in here. But we have said for a minute that it would be nice to get together with some of the other folks here in Chicago who listen to the shows, who are regulars on, listening in the chat at Black Liberation Media and your shows and stuff. And I know all of us are busy, but any Chicago folks out there, let's get together. Because for me, this is my community of radicals right now, you guys, because my focus in my work is in community, and it's folks who aren't well versed in these kinds of things. We're doing some other kinds of things, but so this is where I get my sustenance, and so I'd like more of it.
Look,
what
man,
I mean? So
let's listen.
So I'm just making that call.
My classes end May 9th. I got a little bit of an issue to deal with at the end of May, but other than that, I'm flexible time-wise, man. I would love if we sit down, if we just map out a time and get our schedules linked up, I'll come out there. that's not a problem. We can link up and get the Chicago. We can do a whole thing and do a book event and hang out and, you know, from my perspective, probably eat and drink a little bit too much, but you know what I mean? But I'm down, like I'm down. So it's just a matter of, you know, if next time you went to Fari or meeting up at the cafe, start picking some times, that work.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll do. We'll do. Also want to make this announcement again for you Chicago folks. You don't know me, but my work has been in community gardening and the food movement here, working with a lot of Black farmers, and, indigenous farmers and such. And so we're out in the gardens. We'll be starting to get out in the gardens now, where we teach various kinds of things: political education, how to grow. Tafari is going to do a series every other week. He's going to be teaching capoeira at our garden.
Oh wow!
Along with a friend of mine who's going to be teaching Caribbean dance. So we're trying to, do some of that kind of stuff in the garden, get our hands in the soil, and remember what it means to be indigenous people. So yeah, just letting you know, 104th and Wabash, Wild Hundreds is where we're at. So
all right, everybody, you heard it here first, and just let me know. I mean, I would love to link up. And I just need the excuse of having something to do. All right, Pancho, it was good always to see you, man.
That was it for me. Just want to say that.
I appreciate it, man. Love to you and yours, and I look forward to the book and everything else. And yeah, it's great seeing you, man.
Indeed. Gracias.
All right.
Adios.
Peace. All right, Chitty Matcha, what's up?
Hey, I don't have anything. I feel like following the last two guests. I don't have anything heavy. I don't have anything involved because I'm a Gen Xer like you, and I know I process like more complicated ideas earlier in the day than I do in the evening. And I just wanted to say something else about that book I sent, Palo Alto, about Malcolm Harris, because I'm actually rereading it again because I think people really sleep on California, and I feel like people east of the Mississippi, in particular, like Black people, because when I look at like the U.S. is really run from like four places. The bureaucracy is in D.C., the diplomacy, because the United Nations is there, is in New York. The propaganda arm and the money is in California. So the propaganda arm is Hollywood and Southern California, and then the tech industry in the Bay Area from Palo Alto to San Francisco. But the banks are in San Francisco, like within like the banks, the investment firms. And I think San Francisco winds up being a kind of like an experiment for everything that you can do to the Black population. And it's such a small population that's there, and then they roll it out in the rest of the country in various places testing. Because the one thing about the money, because the thing about San Francisco is you'll have like some blonde hair, blue eyed, like, yeah, down with white supremacy, let's get this organized, but it obscures the reality of the money. That's the kind of like the right wing politic, and San Francisco is a really great test for identity politics because the city itself is so diverse, and it's like 700, I think it might be up to 800,000 people right now, and like 49 square miles or something like that. But when Kamala Harris was there, because I had a take on Kamala Harris even before she was running for president, before she became vice president. And it's annoying me, all of these, especially like Black women who are still so upset because people didn't vote for Kamala, and they just don't understand that the only way she won an election in a state that's less than 7% Black, talking about the attorney general, where it was like only 30% voter turnout, I believe, if I remember correctly, and being in a city like San Francisco as a district attorney, whereas less than 7% Black out of, at the time, 750,000 people, is you have to be anti-Black. Like, you cannot be like in terms of ideologically like pro-black. And so, because I served on a jury trial out there for while she was the district attorney, and for 8 weeks on a trial, everybody in that courthouse was black. Wasn't nobody else in there. And then the young man, he couldn't have been about like 20, 21. He was getting prosecuted for weed. And I'm like, and I'm like the gaslighting that happened with her campaign. So I don't know. I just think like all that to say, like people really sleep on the West Coast as like a test case because it's such a small population. And plus a lot of people that go to the West Coast, they go to LA, they go to Oakland. Because even when like Jackie during the campaign, and I remember she said she was going to the Bay Area, but then when she came back to her show and talked about it, she went to Oakland, which is not San Francisco. And I'm like, I need people to go to San Francisco so I can kind of get a taste and a real understanding of what's happening. Because I say like the San Francisco is what's running things. But yeah, like that Palo Alto, like it's like the best. It's what I've been saying about California for 2 decades, but he actually has like research and data behind it. So yeah, I just wanted to,
thank you for that.
To plug that.
And I saw Renee said that she wants to read it. So that's more than likely one way it's going to be institutionally organized for us to engage. So I look forward to that. But no, thank you for that. And salute to you as being one of the most regular social media supporters of Black Liberation Media. And, I see you out there all the time. Thank you very much. And for your constant support and engagement. It's dope. Appreciate you.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. Because I would probably feel like I was crazier. I did
crazier, she said.
AAPR. Crazier. If it weren't for like because I don't get like, I'm not around anybody in my personal life. They just think I'm like, they don't invite me to places, because people that are older, they don't talk about going to the club or hanging out. They talk about what's happening around them, which is politics. And then if I have something to say, it's the barely suppressed eye roll and like, okay.
There he goes again. That's what I get. There he goes again. Oh.
So I so that it's like the younger people I'm in, organization with, and I say they're the organizers, and I kind of like show up at things, but they move very fast. But at least I don't feel crazy around them. It's just that I can't keep up because I don't have like, Gen Z energy and millennial energy. So
I don't even have Gen X energy.
But it's
I'm on some older. I'm on my parents' generation energy. No, I appreciate you. Definitely thank you for coming through. Absolutely. Shout out to Chitty Matcha. And thank you very much for the book suggestion.
All right, no problem. And
likewise, you too. Take care of yourself. Peace, peace. All right, everybody. Listen, this has been a lot of fun. I will do better next time, both in having more prepared stories, but also in promoting the call-in segment. This was dope. I really appreciate it. Had a good time. Please do again support Black Liberation Media. Millennials Are Killing Capitalism. And Black Men Build, and All African People's Revolutionary Party, Black Alliance for Peace, the Green Party, Party for Socialism and Liberation, and more. Really appreciate you all coming through. As usual, please do like, share, subscribe, support the platform however you think you can. Links are and or will be put in the show description for everything we covered. And as usual, peace only if you're willing to fight for it. Like Fred Hampton used to say. And catch you next time around here for more.
And what do you sacrifice?
Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up small chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, that set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything, 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 everything.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.